In a university campus, a young man was writing in his notebook in his classroom. His name was Chinjila. He was the best student in high school. There was no problem in the world that he couldn't solve. But at this moment, he found himself in a troublesome situation. He had developed a crush on a troublesome girl who sucked on a lollipop during class. She told Jila to leave the homework for her because she had a dungeon to clear with her guild, and the teacher scolded her for sitting on the desk. But Jila simply agreed and picked up the girl's book. Xiaomei asked what he wanted because he was staring at her, and Jila called her while the teacher kept scolding her. Sheila wanted to know if he could join the gaming session as well. The girl left the classroom because of the teacher, but she told him he could join because they needed a healer, and her ID was Sweet Explosive Heart, and he should log in at 8. Sheila walked home in the rain, repeating the girl's ID while announcing that there would be a storm at 8. When the boy arrived home, he greeted his mother, telling her he had arrived. Jili's mother remarked that he was home early, and he explained that school let out earlier because of the weather. His mother noted the heavy rain and told him to rest since dinner would soon be ready. Sheila asked if there was any package for him, and his mother confirmed, saying she had left it in the hallway. Turning around, Sheila looked toward the hallway. He saw a box labeled Cosmos in front of him. His mother asked if he was finally starting to play games, noting she had always told him to relax a bit. She reminded him to come down for dinner, but her son had already gone upstairs. She then deduced he was in a hurry and probably wanted to play with someone, likely a girl. The rain poured heavily outside, accompanied by thunder. Sheila opened the gaming console box. He remarked that it was Cosmos, the most immersive online virtual reality game. The headset allowed access to the nervous system, providing a realistic gaming experience. Sheila reflected that it was ironic to start gaming now and thought Xiaomei must already be very strong. But he reassured himself, saying it wouldn't be hard for him, and then he received a new message. Xiaomei told him to hurry and log in because she had been waiting a long time. Sheila plugged the Cosmos console into the power outlet. Then he placed the headset on his head like a normal helmet. He reflected that this would be his first official date. He connected to the Cosmos gaming world. Sheila stepped into the water of the gaming interface. He entered a system that resembled a login screen. Bubbles began to rise, forming the name Cosmos in the air. The brightness covered his face. A message appeared, thanking him for purchasing Cosmos and welcoming him. Sheila thought it was really cool. An interface appeared before him, explaining that Cosmos was a survival game based on internet myths and legends. It was a world filled with treasures, miracles, and dangers, and he needed to choose his class to start playing. The system asked Sheila to choose a class, and he hesitated, remembering Xiaomei mentioned healers, so he decided he could be one. He clicked the button for healer and confirmed it as his choice. Cosmos informed him that as this was his first console purchase, he could select a free outfit, and Sheila thought he should dress more formally for his first date. A suit appeared, replacing his casual clothes. It completed the transformation in his hands. The system announced that the selection was complete. Sheila looked ahead at the system, which was loading to enter the game. In the city, news reported that the storm had reached a red alert level. A lightning bolt struck Shili's house, hitting the console's power source directly. Energy surged toward the Cosmos device, rising to Shili's head. Sheila grew excited, saying it would be his first date with Xiaomei. But he was electrocuted by the lightning that struck the device immediately after. Sheila wondered what was happening. Everything in his room began to levitate, including himself, floating off his bed. A light engulfed the entire room, illuminating it. But that same light fragmented immediately after. The rain stopped, and the city returned to normal. Shili's headset fell to the ground, empty, with no one in sight. His mother opened the door to his room and asked if he could check why the power had gone out. But she notices he is no longer there and asks where her son went. Screams are heard amidst orcs. A girl is seen fallen, panting heavily. She screams for someone to save her. The orcs notice a light immediately after. Electricity coming from deep within the forest. Sheila appears in front of her. Xiaomei notices this and calls out to him. Sheila holds Xiaomei and says he's late but she shouldn't worry. But Xiaomei simply holds his hand and says he's her hero. Then they kiss. However, it was just a dream of Sheila, who tells Xiaomei to slow down. He's in a desert with a lizard licking him while he hallucinates about Xiaomei. But he snaps out of it, thinking of a repellent. He wakes up calling Xiaomei as he gets up. The lizard begins licking an insect as it moves away from Sheila. Sheila wonders what happened and if the teleportation process was that extreme. It felt as if his body had been electrocuted, but he was comfortable. Then, he gets up from the ground. He looks ahead, saying that, seeing this, he had finally entered the game. Sheila keeps walking through that place, complaining about how hot it was and how realistic the game seemed. The first teleportation should have been to the starting village, but he didn't see anyone around and tried to contact Xiaomei. The system begins searching for the ID, Sweet Explosive Heart, while Sheila observes the sky, which was sunny. but the system informs him there was no player with that name, and he should check again. Sheila says it must be a mistake because he wouldn't remember Xiaomei's name incorrectly. But he starts walking, saying he should head to the starting village and find her directly. Sheila keeps walking for a long time. His face was tired and panting as he used his jacket to shield himself from the sun. Meanwhile, the Cosmos map displays his current location. Sheila wonders if he made a mistake, or if there wasn't a starting village in that area. He asks himself what kind of hell he was in. The system begins contacting the game customizer at 20%, then increasing to 60%. Sweat drips from Jili's face, falling even from his hands. But the system says he's in an area they cannot reach. The boy panics, saying he can't connect to the customization system and that something must be wrong. Because in this kind of weather, he would lose 900 milliliters of sweat per hour. Thus, dehydration was only a matter of time. Therefore, he didn't want to play this game anymore. He says he didn't expect the game to be so difficult but thinks he should exit now and explain it later. However, the game says he cannot leave that area. Sheila is startled by this, trying to press the exit button again and asking if they were joking with him. But every attempt results in the same outcome, being unable to leave the game. The boy asks what it means to be unable to leave the game, and wonders if he's trapped in that game forever. But the system says he has a mission, surprising the boy. His mission is to survive, with an infinite duration and no rewards or penalties. Sheila kneels and screams that he only wanted to play with Xiaomei but is now trapped there. He hits the ground, cursing the game, saying that no matter how much he tries, he can't leave the game or contact anyone, wondering if he will be trapped there forever. 8 hours later, he still couldn't believe he was trapped there. Time passed, and he accepted the fact that he couldn't leave and discovered this game imitates reality. The heat and dehydration were entirely real, and if it continued, he would meet the heavens. However, he wanted to survive, so he needed to find a source of potable water. He picks up a rock from the ground, saying that in a survival show, it was mentioned about limestone, which is often found near springs. His eyes start to shine after realizing this. That area had tons of limestone, so there must be water nearby. The boy sets out to find it, heading toward the water. But a wolf was sniffing its way toward him, thirsty for its new prey. Sheila holds onto a rock, praying his judgment isn't wrong. Then, he hears the sound of a drop falling, coming from a water source inside a cave. Sheila maintains a thirsty expression as he looks at the water. He wets his dry lips, and dives toward the water, reaching his hand as far as he can, plunging his face into the water source, drinking it immediately. Sheila reflects that it was refreshing and how good it felt to be alive. But a wolf was approaching the cave, looking hungrily inside, searching for its prey. Sheila lies down beside the water source. He says the water problem is solved, but he still cannot leave the area. Then, he sits on the cave floor. He mentions that, being a game, there should be a notification on how to exit the desert, but he only sees the system displaying a map and showing his current location. The system informs him that the map function only shows explored areas, and Jilo acknowledges it wouldn't be easy. Still, he decides to check his stats first, finding all his attributes at level 1, including his healing skill. Jilo remarks that his stats are low and he has no offensive abilities, so if he encounters monsters, he would only be able to run. He wonders if he could acquire new abilities. Then, he decides to check his equipment, opening a starter pack. He clicks the open button, and the equipment appears out of nowhere. Shilu is surprised that the healer starter pack includes a sword. For safety, he decides to equip everything, putting on the gloves and sheathing the sword. Sheila quickly moves to the side, swinging his sword and slicing the air. He works on his footing, shifting his stance, swinging the sword downward. Then, he assumes a combat stance facing the cave entrance. Sheila takes a deep breath. He pivots on his foot, cutting a rock inside the cave next to him. The boy says the impact and sharpness of the sword feel real. However, a durability notification pops up, reminding him it's all just a game. Shili's stomach growls loudly. He reflects that he has no information, but he must find food, otherwise, hunger might lead him to the afterlife. A growl from the depths of the cave catches Shili's attention. He wonders what that sound was. Turning around, he looks for its source. He approaches the back of the cave and realizes it's much larger than he initially thought. Shilu reflects that he was so relieved to find water that he forgot to explore this place further. A bone rolls across the floor. Sheila jumps at the sight of the bone, keeping his eyes on it. He sees hundreds of skeletons before him. The boy wonders if they are animal bones. He picks up a bone from the ground. Holding it, he notices numerous bite marks on it. He reflects that this kind of bite mark was described in school textbooks. But he panics, exclaiming that it can't be. He runs, shouting that he needs to get out of there. At that moment, the wolf charges at him, trying to bite Shili's head. The boy is terrified, facing the prospect of death. However, he dodges the wolf, ducking and rolling to the side. He steadies himself, standing face to face with the wolf. Observing that it's a desert wolf with high stamina, capable of traveling 10 kilometers per hour and, in extreme heat, up to 15 kilometers. It's known for reaching speeds of 65 kilometers per hour when chasing prey. Its attack is a bite with a force of 200 kilograms, with a weakness under its belly, and it is 3 levels higher than him. Sheila grips his arm, stating that this place is full of monsters. Because when the wolf attacked, its speed was far superior to his. There's no way to escape by running. So, he unsheathes his sword, drawing the sword to face the wolf. He says that if he loses, he'll meet the afterlife. When Jilo was a high school freshman, he was the captain of the Typhoon Kendo Club, swinging his sword, moving the wooden blade up and down while counting 1 and 2. That dojo was filled with trophies. Jilo was the youngest 6th Dan practitioner in City Z, but he learned Kendo at a young age, because his mother was a huge fan. She was crazy about a star from City J, Musi Yunya. She signed him up for Kendo lessons, forcing him to learn. For Jilo, however, his reasons for doing Kendo were much simpler. He just wanted to wear cool outfits. He started participating but realized it wasn't as easy as he had imagined. Because when his opponent stood in front of him, everything went silent, and he could even hear his own heartbeat. An unfamiliar fear began to emerge within him, making his movements erratic and slow. The source of that fear was simply his own weakness, leading to his defeat. The only way to grow stronger was to keep practicing. No matter the weather, time, or day, he continued training, using all his free time to practice, repeating the same actions. But he was defeated. He managed to get injured but never stopped practicing or swinging his sword. As a result, he received an award, because eventually, he became the youngest 6th Dan practitioner and never stopped training. In this world, the strong survive, and the weak are devoured. The wolf charges at Shilo, who reflects that one can never know how strong or terrifying the next opponent will be. He prepares his sword for a strike. Noticing that, at that moment, it was his perfect chance. He slashes at the wolf, shouting for it not to look down on him. However, the sword bounces back after hitting the wolf's skin. Shili's hand trembles, and he wonders what just happened. Meanwhile, the wolf looks back, enraged. It strikes Shili's abdomen with its tail, injuring him further. Then, it hurls Shilo against the cave wall. Shilo collapses to the ground, panting heavily. He wonders what's happening and why his attacks aren't dealing any damage. His attacks were ineffective and couldn't pierce the wolf's defense, though its weakness was under its belly. Shilo questions whether his strikes truly have no effect. The desert wolf charges at him. He dodges the bite and acknowledges the weak point, but the wolf is too fast for him, targeting all his vital points. Eventually, he ends up against the cave wall, planting his foot. Shilo reflects that he can't inflict any damage and is merely defending against the attacks. If this continues, he will soon be killed. He wonders if this is truly his fate, to die in this completely unknown place. The system alerts him that his health is low and instructs him to restore it. Shilo reflects that since the wolf's weak point is its belly, he might have a chance. The wolf charges at him again. Shilo readies himself, saying he has only one chance to defeat this monster, standing face to face with it. Blood drips onto the ground. The wolf managed to bite Shilo. It injured him, but Shilo stabs the wolf with his sword. He tells it to try ignoring his attack this time. Then, he throws the wolf aside, declaring his victory. He let the wolf bite him to expose its weak point. A risky move, but luckily it worked. The system notifies Shilo that he has defeated the desert wolf, gaining 5 levels and 25 points. Instantly, an aura surrounds him. He reflects that leveling up healed his injuries. The system then announces that a mysterious item shop has been unlocked. Shilo looks back in response. He reflects on being trapped in this game world, earning experience points after defeating the desert wolf, leveling up, and gaining points. He wonders what this mysterious system shop could be. Deciding to check it out first, he enters the shop. An aura begins to appear before him, displaying various types of rare and extremely powerful items, from swords to armor. Shilo wonders if this is the shop. He notices that the shop uses levels to unlock options, and his level decreases when unlocking things. Shilo observes that, beyond equipment, they sell household items and electrical appliances, questioning why anyone would buy appliances in a game. He also notices that the mercenary system requires 100 levels to unlock. A circle forms on the ground after he presses a button on the system. A girl emerges from it. She points a knife at Shilo. He wonders if this is some sort of video presentation. More circles begin to form on the ground. Offensive martial artists step out of them. Defensive types also emerge, along with magic-based mages, and nearby assassin-type thieves. Shilo is amazed by the sheer variety of types. He asks them to wait. He then notices a service-type fairy. Looking at it, he feels embarrassed. He wonders who designed this and if they were suggesting he die a virgin here. The system states that, at Jili's current level, he can only activate the daily essentials. Shilo remarks he has no choice and instructs the system to unlock it. The system announces that he has unlocked 5 Sweetheart Breads and 3 Happy Nerd Waters. At his current level, these are the only items he can exchange for, but he needs to eat and recover energy to survive. He then asks the system to display his stats, noting that his condition seems fine but thinking that increasing his attributes would make him stronger. But no change occurred when adding points. However, those attributes determined his destiny there. He analyzed what each stat did and reflected that there was a 5-level difference between him and the desert wolf, making its strength and speed superior. With this in mind, Sheila allocated 5 points to physical stats, 10 to strength and agility. He then distributed the points into each attribute. He could feel his body changing and his strength improving noticeably. Happy, he remarked how incredible it was to become stronger. But Sheila looked back, seeing several wolves and realizing the whole pack had arrived. He readied his sword, saying it was time to test the effects. And he charged forward, wanting to see if he could defeat all the wolves in the cave. The wolves rushed toward him, but their mouths met Li's sword, and one was split in half. Sheila leveled up, noting that he no longer needed to attack weak points to deal damage. Another wolf lunged at him, trying to bite him, but Sheila slashed it again. He remarked that with his increased stats, his swordsmanship had improved, and all that was left was to take care of the wolves. He leaped off the ground in an instant, preparing his sword to strike the wolves while it gleamed. Sheila advanced, slicing through all the wolves. They were simply struck down and sent to the afterlife in a single blow. The boy leveled up with each wolf he defeated. In the end, he had gained 15 levels, 24,000 experience points, and 75 attribute points, sitting breathless atop the fallen wolves. Sheila commented that, as expected, leveling up was easy if he defeated many monsters. Night fell in the cave. Sheila stood at its entrance, reflecting that now that he had food and water, he should explore the surroundings further. He noticed fur on the ground at the cave's entrance. Surprised by what he saw, several desert wolves lay defeated on the ground. Their skeletons were visible to Sheila. He wondered what all these defeated wolves were, until he heard the sound of one being pierced. Sheila readied his sword and looked up. He saw a figure standing atop a cliff, having pierced a wolf's abdomen. The figure observed the boy from above. Sheila wondered who this person was, but the figure didn't respond. Sheila reflected that something was off. Someone had been standing there just moments ago, and with all these bodies around, he couldn't imagine anything else. He wondered if there was another player trapped in the game like him. He pointed his sword at the wolf's defeated body. He noted that it had been completely drained of fluids. He dragged the wolf's body away from the cliff. Sheila reflected that this player must be extremely cruel. But he was startled by what happened next. A danger warning appeared from the system. He noticed something advancing toward him. Sheila turned his head to see the approach. He slashed at it, piercing the ground and drawing a small drop of blood. A larva stood in front of him. His sword lost 25% durability, and the larva fell to the ground. Sheila realized that whatever had defeated the wolves was not human. He saw a foot approaching him, from which a non-human figure emerged, its hand severed. This was a high-level monster. The monster's hand began vibrating in front of Sheila. He reflected that it was on the same level as the wolves he had fought earlier. If not for his increased agility stat, he would have died from the monster's earlier attack. The monster regrew a hand to replace its severed one. Sheila wondered how it regenerated its own arm. It was called the Wandering Dominator, with an unknown level. In the Lakanaya Desert, it was known for its speed, a predator of predators that consumed the blood of other monsters. No one had ever escaped its hunt. Sheila had prepared himself to face different types of monsters, but the killing intent of this one overwhelmed him. It made him feel like an insignificant ant, helplessly waiting to be sent to the afterlife. Sheila had never felt such fear in his life. The Wandering Dominator advanced. It lunged at the boy with a strike from its hand. Sheila saw the attack coming and cursed. As the Dominator's hand attempted to strike him, it caused a cloud of dust to explode in the area. But Sheila dodged the strike, throwing himself to the side. Sheila reflected that it didn't matter if he was strong. He readied his sword for a downward strike, saying he wouldn't be intimidated by it. The attack was about to hit the Dominator, but it dodged the attack, making Ji Li's sword hit the ground. The boy looks back, wondering what had happened. He sees the Wanderer with a punch aimed at his head. It throws the boy far away. Sheila falls to the ground with his sword. He rolls to the side, unable to do anything. He plants his sword into the ground, determined not to let this happen again. He stands up with his weapon in hand. Panting, the boy doesn't know what to do. He says this is what the system calls absolute speed, while his face remains bruised. Sheila rises after taking the creature's hit. The creature begins speaking in its own language. It moves in the blink of an eye, advancing toward the boy, aiming a punch at his abdomen. Sheila spits blood as the blow lands. He collapses to the ground immediately after, spitting more blood. He remarks that the creature could have sent him to the afterlife just now, and wonders why it didn't. The creature moves its mouth, then kicks Sheila, sending him flying again. The boy struggles to stand, trembling. the creature approaches Sheila and hands him his weapon. Sheila wonders why it did that and what it was planning. The wanderer opens its hand, spreading its fingers, and points to its neck. Sheila questions whether the creature is asking him to try sending it to the afterlife. He wonders why this feels like a cat playing with a mouse before killing it. Realizing the wanderer is merely toying with him, an explosion occurs in the distance near the battle. Li's weapon durability drops by 80%, and he falls to the ground, cursing the wanderer. He says its speed is overwhelming, and his attacks can't cause any damage, but the wanderer grabs him by his shirt. Sheila calls it a bastard, being choked by the wanderer, unable to retaliate. The wanderer starts speaking about humans. Sheila wonders if it can talk, but the wanderer says humans are weak, like pests. However, Sheila cuts its hand off. He distances himself from the creature after the attack, calling it the only weak one here and cursing it again. But the wanderer simply observes its severed hand. It says this is interesting, as it has been centuries since it encountered a human who excited it so much. Sheila replies that he feels the same. It's been a long time since he felt this energized. His family and friends were waiting for him, and he had a long life ahead. An aura surrounds him as he declares he won't die in a place like this. He shouts that he will definitely return home. A bright light radiates throughout the area, even forcing the wanderer to shield its eyes as it encircles Sheila. Sheila becomes enveloped, electricity flickering in his eyes. He advances in just 1 second. His hair begins to float in the air. His extraordinary fighting spirit had awakened a divine blessing. All his attributes increased by 100, enhancing his strength, agility, attack power, and stamina. Sheila prepares his sword, now surrounded by black lightning. The wanderer remarks that this looks more entertaining and invites the human to approach. It is startled when it sees the protagonist advancing without warning, and is struck by Li's sword blow to its chest. Blood spills from the wanderer, who had seemed invincible to Sheila. Sheila observes it with a murderous glare. He delivers multiple slashes to the creature's chest, fury written all over his face. A notification states that the weapon's durability has reached 0, and Li's sword is destroyed. But he tosses it aside immediately, then delivers an uppercut to the wanderer's chin, sending it flying a great distance with ease. Sheila declares he will use it to gain more experience and grow stronger. He approaches the wanderer, as smoke clears from his field of vision, revealing that the wanderer had disappeared from the area. But the same wanderer reappears behind the boy, striking him with insect-like blows. The wanderer calls him an ignorant human, saying he is nothing but a mere pest, an insect. Sheila wonders if, even after all this, he still can't defeat it. The wanderer begins to levitate, lifting off the ground. It generates an electric attack in its hand, while a gigantic reaper-like figure appears behind it, surrounded by aura and energy. The wanderer bids farewell to Sheila, and it moves its hand forward to strike the boy. Sheila sees everything happening through his bloodied eye, until he is struck by the attack, and slashed multiple times without even having a chance to fight back. Sheila freezes, lamenting in his thoughts, wondering if he is about to die. As the system announces that the player Sheila has reached 0 health and passed away, Sheila suddenly wakes up, rising from a bed in a wooden house. Panting heavily, the boy begins to breathe deeply. He wonders if he's still alive, wanting to know if he had left the game, but he looks out the window and tells himself to wait, wondering where he is. Sheila manages to open the system even in that place. He remarks that it's still there, and it seems he's still trapped in the game. However, he recalls being killed by the monster, and wonders why he's lying there, unharmed. He examines his body for injuries but finds none and questions what's going on. The door opens, and a female foot steps into the room. A red-haired girl appears, holding a blade. She tells Sheila he's finally awake. Both fall silent as she catches him lifting his shirt. Sheila waves at her, explaining that he had just woken up. The girl shouts for her grandfather, Wu Bulei, announcing that the boy has awakened, before rushing out of the room. Sheila wonders what's happening and whether he's in the starter village. But an old man with scarred arms enters, plucking a leaf from the ground. He gathers the leaves as he walks forward, shouting about what the boy just said. The girl asks Sheila if he had died. Sheila confirms, explaining that his body was completely pierced and wonders how he ended up there. The girl reveals that her grandfather, Wu Bulei, found him while out hunting. She explains that Sheila was on the brink of death but had a sliver of life left. Wu Bulei declares that this is not a starter village in a game, and they are not NPCs or anything like what Sheila mentioned. Sheila reflects that it makes no sense because this is definitely the game world, and something isn't right here. He has a sudden realization and tells himself to wait. Pointing forward, he asks them to look at the system, but both grandfather and granddaughter simply stare at him. Sheila explains that this is the game's status menu, mission list, and equipment screen, and he can even view the map. The girl asks her grandfather if the monster hit Li's head too hard, causing him to go crazy, and the old man agrees. Sheila reflects that he still can't access the game's menu or find Xiao Mei after searching, leaving him disconnected from the outside world. Frustrated, he wonders how he can leave this place, shouting that he just wants to go home. But Wu Bule tells him he cannot leave, because anyone who enters the Latanea desert is cursed to remain there forever. He explains that the desert is vast, and while one might think they could find a way out, there is no exit. The girl recounts how years ago, she and her grandfather traveled to the Argama continent to slay a dragon but encountered a storm. When they woke up, they were here. Her grandfather said this was the legendary Latanea desert, capable of trapping even gods. The only way to gain freedom is to locate the palace of the god Kebli, as this desert is a dungeon with no exit. Many people have sought a way out of Kebli's palace, but most never returned alive. Afterward, people accepted their fates and stopped searching, choosing to live here rather than risk death. Sheila stares ahead with determination. But Wu Bule places a hand on his shoulder and tells him that every year, new people arrive here, yet no one has found a way out. He advises the boy to accept his reality, saying it would be better for him, and that his granddaughter Sally would take him to explore the city after he rests a bit. Sheila reflects that he is inside the game, and this feels like a manga or an isekai of this genre. But a system notification announces that he has received a new mission. The mission states, "Avenge the departure of the god Kebli," and asks him to accept it. The task requires him to gain the protection of the god Kebli and remove his seal. The condition is to locate the palace of the god Kebli in the Latanea desert and defeat the monster Nabis to free him. And the reward was the key to unlocking the seal of the Latanea desert. In an open grassy field, Sheila reflects that he doesn't know how he ended up there, but now he finally found a way to leave. He needs to locate the palace of the god Kebli and defeat the monster Nabis. After that, he'll finally be able to leave this place. Sally calls out Sheila's name. Sheila stands up and looks at the girl standing near a tree. Sally asks what he's doing there, and says she's been looking for him everywhere. Sheila apologizes and explains he just wanted to be alone, so he decided to take a walk. Then, he looks ahead, pointing and asking if that's the Latanea desert. The girl nods, saying it's part of it. However, she explains that their city is now surrounded by the Latanea desert, which stretches endlessly in all directions. Sheila looks around him. He wonders how he's supposed to find the palace of the god Kebli, and Sally asks if he's really going to try. Sheila reflects that yes, he has to leave this place, no matter what. Sally says there is no palace. It's just a rumor, and he'll die if he doesn't quit. But Sheila starts walking, ignoring her. He says he's already died once, so he must find the god's palace to return home. He tells Sally to come back to the city with him. Sally walks alongside Sheila calmly, asking if he's really going to search for the palace. Sheila simply nods. The girl continues, saying the desert is full of strong monsters, and even her grandfather couldn't defeat them all. Sheila tells her he's strong enough, so she shouldn't worry. But something strikes both of them, with multiple slashes raining down from above. Sheila sees everything through his eyes. They are hit by an explosion, destroying the ground beneath them. Several people approach them. A group of well-dressed individuals. The leader of the group says the prey has taken the bait. Sheila shields his face with his elbow and asks what's going on. He observes the people standing there, noticing that Sally has been hit and is sitting on the ground. The leader of the men says she used a flame cage to block their blades, and greets Sally again. Sally asks why Boban is there again. Sheila questions what's happening and why they're attacking him. Sally explains that there's something scarier than the monsters, bandits. Because they don't hunt in the desert, they rob other people instead. They're a group of horrible individuals who hunt humans to survive, and Boban laughs, holding two dark blades, one in each hand. Sheila questions what kind of ability that is. Boban says that last time she managed to escape, but this time, they wouldn't fall for the same trick. Sally releases flames from her body in an instant. She tells Sheila to go back and call her grandfather for help because she'll hold them off. Wu Bule stands in front of his house. Suddenly, a lightning bolt strikes from the sky. The old man continues walking around. He wonders if another storm is coming. He heads back to his house while carrying plants, but he notes that Sally should have already returned from the city by now. Meanwhile, Boban says he wouldn't let them reach the old man. He points out that Sally knows her spells are ineffective and suggests she surrender to him obediently. If she does, he might consider letting Sheila go. Sally shouts that there's no chance. Boban says she'll be to blame for whatever happens next. Sally yells at Sheila to stop hesitating and escape immediately. However, Sheila says no. Sally questions his decision. Sheila says he's not someone who abandons his friends, even though they've only known each other for a short time. So, there's no way he'll run while she's risking herself here. Boban grabs Sheila by the face with his hand, and slams him against the wall to hurt him. Sally approaches, screaming for Sheila. But Boban says he's just a piece of trash and questions why he's acting all heroic, saying things like that. He says Sheila shouldn't use words but his own strength. However, Sheila grabs Boban's arm. He asks if Boban thinks he's strong as he pushes him away. Then, he questions if Boban thought he could ambush them. delivering a punch to Bo-ban. Bo-ban barely dodges it and retreats, his arm now injured. Bo-ban curses, saying Gila dislocated his wrist so easily. Gila reflects that Bo-ban was fast, even though Gila had added several points to agility, and yet Bo-ban could easily dodge his attack. Sally asks if Gila is okay, and he confirms. The girl asks what Bo-ban actually wants. Bo-ban shouts, saying he's told her many times. He wants Sally to be his girlfriend. Sally says she has already told him that it's impossible. Gila asks if he did all of this just to make her his girlfriend, and the girl nods. Bo-ban asks if Gila is Sally's boyfriend and if he's being rejected because of him. Sally questions what he's talking about and says they're just friends. However, Bo-ban doesn't believe her and tells her to stop making excuses. He shouts at Sheila to fight him like a man and stop hiding behind a girl like a coward. He declares that if Sheila wins, he'll stop tormenting Sally. A mission pops up for Sheila, instructing him to defeat the shadow assassin, Bo-ban. The reward for the mission is the Latinea ancient map. Sheila wonders about this side quest and realizes the map's reward could help him leave this place. The boy shouts that he accepts the duel. Bo-ban readies his blades and says that's what he wanted to hear. His subordinates ask if Bo-ban is serious, some of them sounding envious. Meanwhile, Sally asks if Sheila is sure about this since there's no way he can defeat Bo-ban, who is strong and known as the Shadow Assassin. Sheila asks about the Shadow Assassin and whether he's truly strong. Sally confirms, explaining that Bo-ban uses the power of shadows, giving him not only speed advantages. His shadow-infused equipment has powerful attacks and great strength, which could easily kill Sheila. However, Sheila steps closer, asking if that's all, since he has already died once. He charges forward, saying at this point, he'll do whatever it takes to leave this place, heading straight into battle with Bo-ban. Sheila tries to land a strike on Bo-ban, wondering why he can't have a peaceful life like before. He tells himself he just needs to defeat Bo-ban to get the map and leave, but Bo-ban dodges using shadows. Sheila turns his failed strike into a kick aimed at the side of Bo-ban's head, but Bo-ban simply leans back, dodging the kick while laughing. He then prepares his daggers for the next attack. The two face off while Sally watches. Bo-ban taunts Sally, asking if this weakling is the one she likes. Sheila wonders why Bo-ban isn't attacking and if his plan is only to defend. Sally urges Sheila to leave and find her grandfather, Wubule, as only he can stop Bo-ban. However, Sheila says he won't leave Sally behind, surprising her. Sheila says this is a fight he must have, and if he wins, they can leave this place. Sally asks what he means about leaving this place, and what defeating Bo-ban has to do with getting out. Sheila reflects that since entering the game, nothing has made sense. He can't log out, has died and revived, and now must defeat Bo-ban. Everything from the start seemed to be leading to this specific event. Bo-ban calls Sheila's attention, throwing his weapons to the ground to pin them there. He tells Sheila to stop daydreaming in the middle of a fight, asking if he's scared, because it's too late for that now. Sheila asks why he would be scared of a coward who doesn't even dare to attack. Bo-ban says he doesn't want to attack someone weak who is unarmed. Since this is a fight between two men, it should be fair, he says, picking up a sword from the ground. He tosses the sword toward Sheila. The sword spins in the air until it reaches its target. Sheila simply catches it in his hand without hesitation. Bo-ban says he doesn't want Sally or his subordinates thinking he's bullying someone. Bo-ban's subordinates remark that he's finally getting serious. Meanwhile, Sally stays silent, watching the confrontation. Sheila says he didn't expect Bo-ban to fight fairly, considering the previous sneak attacks. Bo-ban replies that those weren't sneak attacks but instinctive reactions, and Sheila just agrees. Preparing himself, Sheila says they'll have a fair fight from now on. He reflects that he must defeat Bo-ban to get the map at all costs. Bo-ban thinks to himself that now he'll show Sheila the true strength of a shadow assassin. Thus, Sheila gets ready, making a move against Bo-ban using his sword. Bo-ban, on the other hand, simply smiles, and leaps into the air, merging with shadows. Sheila is surprised by this move from his opponent, and Bo-ban prepares an attack with his sword bathed in shadows. However, Sheila manages to block the strike using his other sword, given to him by Bo-ban. Sheila is pressured by the attack and focuses entirely on defending, but Sally calls him and warns of an attack from behind, while a clone of Bo-ban prepares to attack him as well. Sheila turns and defends against the clone's strike, countering it while Bo-ban prepares his blow. Bo-ban's clone attacks him from above with the shadow sword, but vanishes as the real Bo-ban is above Sheila, ready to strike him stealthily. Sheila curses him mentally as he notices the attack, and Sally tries to call his attention back to the fight. However, his shoulder is slashed by Bo-ban with the shadow sword. His life decreases by 300, leaving only 700, and if it drops below 300, the mission will automatically fail. Bo-ban retreats and tells Sheila to just give up, because he couldn't defeat him. Sheila, however, stands up, saying he couldn't give up, as the system asks if he wants to heal the wound using his abilities. The young man looks at the screen, amazed. Then he says yes. Thus, his life is restored, regaining 100 points and stopping the bleeding. Bo-ban's subordinates comment that he's a healer and question whether a healer had really tried to fight a shadow assassin. Bo-ban tells him to leave Sally and flee because a healer couldn't fight him. Sheila asks if he's afraid of being defeated by a healer and humiliated in front of Sally. Bo-ban gets angry and questions what he just said. Thus, Sheila prepares his sword and tells him to shut up and come at him. Bo-ban prepares his shadows and warns that he will now show his true power as a shadow assassin, creating several shadow clones to attack Sheila. Sheila wonders if that bastard had split into 3, because it seemed shadow assassins divided into clones for combat. And when he attacked before, the clone went first, but Bo-ban's main attack came from behind, meaning the main body and the clone could switch positions. He says that's a troublesome profession to deal with. Bo-ban says that Trash awakened as a healer, and it disgusts him, because if he wanted to know his true power before kicking the bucket, he would show his invincible shadow attack. Sheila prepares his sword and says he's ready for it. Thus, he charges toward them. Bo-ban calls him an arrogant kid, and sends one of the clones to play with him. The clone moves very quickly. Sheila positions his sword, preparing to move. Thus, he defends the clone's attack with ease. The swords repel each other afterward, and the clone attacks Sheila again. Sheila, panting, separates from the clone. Thus, he dodges its attacks and always counters, but they're blocked. Sheila reflects that it's very strong because he's blocking attacks from just one clone. But there are still 2 more, and one disappears next to Bo-ban. This one is moving behind Sheila. The clone says he was lucky to dodge last time, but he won't be so lucky now. Thus, it attacks Sheila from behind, hitting his shoulder. The sword falls to the ground. Sally is shocked by this, and Bo-ban's subordinates as well. Bo-ban's clone asks how that's possible, as he dodged his blow and managed to land a strike. And Bo-ban asks what happened. Sheila backs away, panting, reflecting that it was close, as he nearly kicked the bucket just now. The system congratulates him for increasing his agility and obtaining the skill Explosive Slash, a hidden skin unlocked when encountering an assassin's strike, obtainable through the agility attribute. This allows him to dodge all physical attacks for 2 seconds, and his next attack inflicts 150% damage. With a cooldown of 5 minutes, Sheila reflects that if he hadn't gained this in time, his head would have been cut off. Thus, he takes a fencing stance and says he just needs to defeat the clones now. Bo-ban laughs as the clone retreats, and says it's interesting because he managed to dodge again and hurt his clone. Thus, he says the real game has started and commands them to return. Li's sword returns to Bo-ban, who reflects that he showed mercy to a cruel enemy and underestimated him. Bo-ban says he won't play around anymore, and Sheila should open his eyes and watch closely. Thus, the clones join their swords together, making something emerge. Sheila observes carefully the strike they are preparing, and sees the clones and Bo-ban creating 6 new weapons. Then, he breaks his limiter, and uses the barrage strike, hitting the ground and releasing multiple shadows, which surround and catch Sheila off guard, and attempt to strike his left eye. But Sheila dodges the blow by moving backward, thus evading all the attacks aimed at him. Yet one of the attacks hits his arm, gradually cutting his biceps as he continues trying to dodge. Bo-ban laughs, saying he could dance as much as he wanted. The system alerts that Li's life is below 30% and urges him to heal immediately as he keeps dodging without reacting. But he sees Bo-ban in front of him, preparing an attack, which surprises him. A shadow rises from the ground alongside Bo-ban's attack, but Sheila evades it. Bo-ban says that the Reaper is there for his life, and starts targeting Sheila repeatedly with his strikes. The cuts continue as Bo-ban leaves the attack area, and he says he will find a good place to beach in Li's grave, but a lightning bolt charges toward him, surprising Bo-ban with its sudden appearance. Wu Bule moves into the scene, as lightning begins to encircle the city, resembling an approaching storm. Sally finds herself paralyzed with fear, alongside Bo-ban's subordinates. Even Bo-ban is startled by what's happening, while Li's eyes are surrounded by electricity. Wu Bule had blocked Li's strike with his hand, then saying that was more than enough, and looking gently at the boy. The rain continues to fall in the immense forest. Sheila is panting, blood still marking his clothes. But he ceases his strike after being blocked by Wu Bule. Wu Bule says that's enough now. Sally approaches the two and asks if Sheila is okay. Sheila holds his own wrist and says he's fine. But Wu Bule starts walking, telling the two to return because the storm is on its way. Bo-ban, however, begins laughing at the three, saying it's all just a joke that happened, and asking if Wu Bule thinks he can just grab them and leave. Wu Bule stops walking as the rain pours, and tells Bo-ban that if he hadn't blocked Li's strike, he wouldn't even be standing right now. Bo-ban wonders if he's lying while recalling the sensation, telling the old man to stop talking nonsense because Jilo is just a rookie awakened and couldn't possibly have the ability to defeat him, and if he hadn't interfered. Bo-ban screams, saying he would have sent Jilo to the afterlife. But Jili's mission is completed, earning him 15,000 experience points, the map, and a hidden key. Jilo asks if the system judged that as his victory, but Wu Bule covers Sally, and says they need to leave before the storm arrives. Bo-ban's subordinates tell him they should leave as well because staying trapped in the storm would be their end. Bo-ban shouts for Jilo to come back because their fight isn't over yet, and yells for him to return and fight, while his subordinates hold him back. Jilo looks back, impressed by Bo-ban. Wu Bule tells him to go, as the storm will arrive in a second, and Jilo says he's going. At home, Sally tells Jilo to stop moving, saying he needs to stay still and hold on, because she can't properly use medicine if he keeps moving like that. Jilo apologizes for causing trouble like this, but Sally says she didn't expect him to be so strong. He reflects that he earned some EXP but didn't level up, so he should treat his injuries normally. Asking Sally if Wu Bule had known Bo-ban before this, Sally says she and Bo-ban grew up together as kids and were like siblings. Then, she tells Jilo that she's finished treating his wounds. Jilo thanks Sally as he sits down. Sally says she's the one who should be thankful, thanking Jilo for that, and leaving the room, saying she needs to help Wu Bule, so Jilo needs to stay and rest. Jilo tells her to be careful. The rain continues to fall as Sally walks toward Wu Bule. Jilo looks out the window, remarking that the rain is coming down heavily. He wonders what his mother might be doing, assuming she must have panicked when she couldn't find him. Then he says he should return soon because now he has the map of Latinea after completing the mission. He plans to use it to find the Palace of God, defeat the boss, and leave the palace. So, he decides he'll leave as soon as the rain stops. But the system notifies him that he has earned a hidden key and needs to confirm it. Jilo asks what the purpose of a secret key is. He uses it, entering the system. The system explains that during battles, there can be various treasures based on color rarities, and this key can be used to open a chest automatically. He picks up the key and remarks that after this battle, he received a random treasure, which is interesting. He then grabs the cloak on the bed. Putting it on, he says he'll leave this place soon. However, Wu Bule arrives in the room. Jilo greets him as Grandpa Wu Bule and says he's back. Wu Bule says he couldn't come earlier due to the rain and had to protect the crops. Jilo assures him it's fine, and Wu Bule asks about his injuries. The young man tells him not to worry, as they are just small cuts and bruises that will heal in a few days. Wu Bule says that's good to hear since he didn't expect Jilo to defeat Bo-ban, the strongest assassin in the village. Jilo says he was underestimated but admits he might not have won. Wu Bule explains that he knew about Bo-ban's abilities and that combat isn't just about strength. Willpower and spirit play a crucial role. He adds that Jili's victory wasn't merely fate or coincidence. Jilo asks Wu Bule how Bo-ban turned out this way if he and Sally grew up together. Wu Bule exhales smoke from his pipe and says it's a long story. Sally and Wu Bule went to Latinea 10 years ago, on a night when it rained heavily, much like today. They passed by a house and discovered a terrible demonic monster attacking someone. It was too late, as the monster had already defeated the adults inside the house. But a child had survived, trying to wake his already fallen mother. The monster moved to attack the boy again, and struck at him, while he cried, mourning the loss of his mother, until a lightning bolt struck the area, blasting the demon monster away before it could react. It was Wu Bule protecting the boy. The defeated monster clutched its arm, and turned to look at Wu Bule, then fled into the forest. The boy mourned his mother's death in a corner of the room. Wu Bule recalls that this boy was Bo-ban. Since he lost his parents, Wu Bule adopted him and took care of him. Jilo asks why he acts this way in front of him now. Wu Bule explains that after Bo-ban took on the mission to find the monster and avenge his parents, he tried to convince him to give up and live a normal life. Because in Latinea, there are many monsters of formidable forms, and even at full strength, Wu Bule wasn't sure he could defeat the monster that killed Bo-ban's parents. But Bo-ban rejected his master's advice and left to grow stronger, and Jilo reflects that even Grandpa might not be able to defeat that monster. Wu Bule suggests they stop the discussion and tells Jilo to rest. While Jilo reflects that with the map, he will now find the Palace of God. However, the desert contains many strong monsters, and he wonders what would happen if he encounters another dangerous monster. With his current strength, he'd kick the bucket before even reaching the palace. He recalls having fought a terrifying monster before, which could have easily defeated him, so he knows he needs to grow stronger. Jilo calls out to Wu Bule before he leaves, asking him to train him because he wants to become stronger, find the Palace of God, and leave this place. Wu Bule stops and drops his hat, telling Jilo to just get some good rest. Jilo insists he's serious because he has a way to leave this place, but Wu Bule simply leaves, and Gila reflects that the relationship between Wu Bulei and Bo Ben ended up like this for the same reason. He resolves not to act impulsively. However, Gila is surprised when Wu Bulei stops in front of him and says that after the rain stops, he should meet him on the hill, because if he passes the test, the old man will train him. Gila shouts that he will definitely pass that test. Wu Bulei reflects that, somehow, Gila might be the only hope of leaving this place because, in the previous fight, he demonstrated an interesting skill that bypassed his defense. And if he becomes strong enough, he could be capable of freeing everyone from this cursed place. A mission then appears, surprising Gila. The mission is a daily task requiring him to run 10 kilometers with weights, do 3,000 push-ups, and 2,000 sit-ups. Gila reflects that it seems extreme, but attribute points are important, so he shouldn't give up. Thus, he accepts the daily mission. On the hill, at dawn, labored breathing can be heard. Gila is carrying a log on his back while walking, reflecting that the system is kind enough to even provide the weights he needs. He has completed the run and is now doing push-ups, having also completed 984 sit-ups. He reflects that it has been a long time since he felt like this, working hard for a reward, and this kind of challenge excites him. The mission is then completed, and Gila earns 4 attribute points. He wonders where to allocate the 4 points, but decides that, since his main skill is healing and his defense is weak, he should add 2 points to wisdom and 2 to stamina. However, Gila is called by Sally, who approaches him, running. Gila asks what she's doing there, and Sally says she prepared breakfast for him because he wasn't home, and her grandfather told her where he was. She asks if he's training there and hands him a food package. Gila confirms, saying that Wu Bulei agreed to train him. Sally questions whether Wu Bulei really accepted to train him, and Gila simply nods. She says that's incredible, and she's curious to know what attribute he will awaken. Gila asks what an attribute is, as he's a healer and wonders if he can awaken other attributes. Sally explains that yes, a healer is the profession given by God, but he can still awaken an element based on his personal abilities. For example, she can use fire, Wu Bulei can use lightning, and Bo Ben uses shadows. Everyone has an attribute, and the profession is just a guide for future development. Gila reflects that he's excited to discover which attribute he will awaken. This world is divided into 5 areas, and he is currently in the central lands of Latinea, a place rich in resources and trade where people from all over the world gather. To the west lies the volcanic land of Megara, home of the racing dragon. To the north is the winter land of Kasansado, filled with giants and berserker monsters and abundant crystal resources. To the east is the Vergama forest, inhabited by mystical elves and other types of mystical monsters. To the south is the land of Chubatik, home to dwarves renowned for their forging and known as the World's End. According to rumors, that place is connected to the divine world of the Endless Ocean, and if one passes through it, they'll reach God's residence and gain infinite power. Since arriving in this place, the Endless Ocean and God's Palace have always been rumors, but given everything he's seen, they might actually be true. Gila accepts this and says he needs to leave this desert because it's not just a rumor. Sally nods in agreement with what Gila said. Wu Bulei greets them, saying he didn't expect them to arrive so early, and Sally gets up to greet her grandfather. Her grandfather asks if she already confessed to him so quickly, and Sally questions what he's talking about. But Wu Bulei simply observes Gila, and asks if he's ready for his test. Gila agrees and says he's finally ready. Wu Bulei explains that since the beginning, the gods created different races, attributes, and professions, but elements are common among them. Because in this world, there are things outside that one can see and touch, like elements, which are untouchable. And to grasp an element, one must feel and awaken it. Thus, Wu Bulei brings his hands together, creating various symbols around him. He tells Gila to feel the presence within himself, and sense everything flowing through his body. Wu Bulei draws lightning emanating from his body by simply placing his hand on the ground. Wu Bulei says the magic circle will teleport him to monsters somewhere in the desert, and he had gone to that area while hunting. Drawing a sword from his back, Wu Bulei says it is Ozil, which has accompanied him for many years. He explains that, in 3 days, the teleport gate will open, and Gila must use the sword to defeat the Beast King and bring back its head to pass the test. However, he must awaken his elemental power to unleash the full potential of the sword. Only then will he be able to defeat the Beast King. Once he enters the dungeon, there will be no way to bring him back, so this is the moment for him to quit if he chooses. Gila smirks. He grips the sword and says he won't give up, because he will return with the Beast King's head. The dungeon mission activates, tasking him with bringing the Beast King's head, and Gila must accept it. Gila confirms his participation in the mission. The system notifies him that the mission is in progress, lasting 72 hours. He is then transported through a teleportation portal. Wu Bulei reflects that the monsters have strong defenses and only elemental powers can defeat the Beast King, so Gila must quickly discover the path to awakening. Gila finally arrives at the location as lightning descends. He finds himself in a rocky area, and wonders if this is the dungeon. The area is black in color, and the sky has no light at all. He notices a foul stench lingering in the air as well. But that doesn't matter because his mission is to find monsters. At his current level, defeating the boss would be difficult, so he needs to defeat smaller monsters first to level up. A black light appears in the sky behind Gila, and he says he's going to do this. Suddenly, a green attack attempts to strike his head, but Gila dodges it. He wonders if he's already been discovered. Looking closer, he sees what it is. A monster opens its wings and stands before him, revealing itself to be a Dotem, level 20, one of the most mysterious monsters in Latinea. Gila reflects that he hasn't awakened his elemental power but can still use the sword because its power depends on how he wields it. He draws the sword, stating that he wants to see how strong he truly is. With every battle, his combat experience grows, so he charges at the beast, reflecting that by now, he's no longer a weak beginner. The Dotem releases some form of energy to block Gila, but Gila reflects that it doesn't matter which monster he's fighting. He no longer feels fear or hesitation because his fighting spirit drives him forward. He just needs to defeat monsters to gain experience and grow stronger. Thus, he slashes the Dotem's tentacles, dodging the remaining tentacles that attempt to pierce him from above. Gila plants his foot firmly on the ground and charges at the Dotem with full speed. The Dotem also prepares its strike. Gila continues reflecting that he feels himself growing stronger with every fight, and leveling up after defeating monsters is exhilarating. He drives his sword into the Dotem, pushing it deeper and twisting it to enlarge the wound, finally slicing the monster into 2 parts. Its pieces fall to the ground beside Gila. As he levels up to 17, earning 5 points, he reflects that this keeps him focused and motivated. However, other Dotems appear before him. Boban releases energy, screaming that it's not enough, tearing chunks from a nearby rock, slicing through multiple pieces as part of his training, then screaming during his practice, shattering the rock into hundreds of fragments. He reflects that it's impossible and wonders how he lost, because a healer without elemental power unleashed fear with a single attack and made him tremble. He recalls that he had never seen Wu Bule use his ability that way and could barely block the strike. Boban climbs onto a rock, calling Gila a bastard, and asking what kind of being he is. Gila leaps from the ground, slicing through a Dotem and leveling up, then defeating another and leveling again. Thus, he defeats multiple Dotems consecutively using the sword Oziel. The system notifies Gila that he has leveled up, and informs him he has reached level 25, with 45 unallocated points and access to the medical shop. It asks if he wants to spend 15 levels to unlock the medical shop, and Gila questions this. He reflects on how much effort it took to reach this point, and now needing 15 levels to unlock the medical shop seems like a headache. However, the higher his level, the harder it will be to progress, and in the future, unlocking or buying items will become significantly more expensive. Thus, he opens the shop, revealing various sections. The one requiring 300 levels catches his attention. He comments that he should prioritize unlocking the better shops first, as that would be the right choice, but his current situation doesn't allow it. So, he activates the medical shop, receiving potions. The recovery potions consume levels to heal him and enhance his attacks. Gila reflects that, as expected, his health increases with levels, and in the future, his health could reach 10,000, allowing him to recover 8,000 in just 10 seconds. He realizes he would be invincible with healing potions and proceeds to unlock the shop using 15 levels, then buys the Berserker Warrior potion, using 8 levels and leaving him with only 2. He reflects that now he effectively has 2 lives, which makes him feel more secure. But his stomach growls loudly. He realizes he used a lot of energy defeating the monsters and now has only 2 levels left, wondering if he could buy some essentials. He notices some bread that reduces hunger and decides to purchase it. Gila eats the bread, complaining that it's hard and that Sally's bread is much better. He then realizes 12 hours have already passed, leaving him with 60 hours to complete the mission. Remembering his grandfather mentioned the beasts were located in the northwest, he decides to follow the map to find them. The system notifies Gila that he has 45 unallocated status points. Gila realizes he forgot to distribute them, and wonders how best to allocate them. Reflecting that, while his strength and agility have improved significantly, his mana and defense are still weak, he decides to focus on those areas. He notices that when his health is low, his attacks begin to miss, leaving him vulnerable to enemy strikes, as if it were a test where he only gets one chance to succeed. However, with infinite attributes and the ability to level up continuously, he knows he needs different strategies to achieve perfect battles. He allocates 15 points to physicality, 15 to strength, and splits the remaining 15 among defense, agility, and magic, deciding to rely on the potion he purchased if necessary. Then, he begins walking, reflecting that he now needs to find the beast's cave, and complete his mission. Meanwhile, in Sally and Wu Bulei's village, Sally expresses concern, saying the beast cave is dangerous and wondering if Sheila will really be okay. Wu Bulei, however, is tending to a plot of land. He tells Sally not to worry because he marked the sword, and if Sheila gets close to defeat, he'll bring him back. Sally questions why he sent Sheila to the beast's cave and why she didn't know about it earlier. Wu Bulei plants his hoe in the ground and explains that he accidentally stumbled upon the cave while hunting, but he cuts the conversation short, saying he needs to head into town and reminding her to feed the roosters. Sally notices something seems off. Wu Bulei walks alone toward the town, reflecting that he can't stop Sheila now, no matter how hard he tries, and that's why he sent him to the beast's cave, to show him the reality of the world. He admits that he doesn't know how, but he believes it's impossible for Sheila to pass the test, yet he still holds on to hope that he'll bring back the Beast King's head. If Sheila actually does it, he'll believe he's the savior destined to lead them out of this cursed place. Sheila continues walking for 3 hours. He notes that the beast den should be nearby, but hears someone screaming for help, begging to be saved. He turns to see a mother and a child running. Sheila wonders why a mother and child are in such a place and how they got there. As he moves toward them, he tells the woman not to be afraid and asks her to explain what happened, but she keeps pleading for help. Shaking and talking about the monster, a rusted chain is heard from a distance, and a heavy breath exhales far away, revealing 3 monsters approaching while the mother trembles in fear. The monsters of Latinea have extreme destructive power and high health, making them like giant moving tanks. In front of Sheila stands a beastman named Rakadler, of low intelligence, who tames beasts and can summon them on a large scale. Sheila reflects that this opponent is of a higher level than the monsters he's faced before and also more intelligent, telling the mother to stay behind him, thinking that, since a beast appeared here, the base can't be far away. However, the woman and child seem strange, so he wonders if they could have been transported there. Observing their trembling, Sheila begins to release his energy. Rakadler orders Sheila to offer his head obediently and taste the bitterness of defeat. He commands his beasts to go and tear apart these insects. However, one of his beasts is struck in the head by Sheila, who spins his sword with speed and mastery, and retaliates against the monster with consecutive strikes, thus inflicting cuts and causing it to bleed heavily. He then kicks it to the ground, forcing it to fall. It hits the ground hard, creating a large cloud of dust. The monster is left severely injured, sprawled on the ground, and Sheila kicks another one, making it roll backward. While the mother and child watch in awe of his strength, Sheila finally lands on the ground after his fight, and reflects that he has become much stronger since leveling up. Meanwhile, Rakadler watches his beast being defeated, ordering the other to attack Sheila and defeat him immediately. But the beast observes its fallen companion, and hesitates for a moment, feeling intimidated, then flees from its master, who orders it to return. Rakadler tells it to run away, calling it useless trash, declaring he will defeat Sheila with his own hands. But he suddenly notices the sword stopping at his throat. Sheila commands him to drop his equipment and not move, otherwise he will cut off his head. He starts walking closer to him, asking why he was chasing the mother and child. Rakadler calls Sheila a mere human and says he is a servant of God, warning that if Sheila kills him, he will be cursed by God. But Sheila disregards this and slashes his face, injuring his left eye. Sheila tells him it will be worse next time, demanding to know where the beast's base is located. Rakadler points toward a mountain, saying it is beyond there. Sheila reflects that Rakadler doesn't seem to be lying, as the location matches the system's description of a mountain of black rocks. However, amidst the chaos, the beastman seizes an opportunity, charging toward the mother and child, declaring to Sheila that if he wants to protect these 2 insects, he should watch as he defeats them and drinks their blood, claiming that this is his true strength. With no time to waste, Sheila moves swiftly, kicking Rakadler in the head, while another figure, radiating a yellow aura, reacts simultaneously. Rakadler is confused about who he should defend against, and realizes this may be his end, as he is struck by both kicks, flying backward from the impact, and crashing to the ground after being hit by both blows. Sheila looks at the man, wondering who he is. The man comments that Sheila has very impressive moves. After some time, Sheila asks the man who they are and how they ended up there. The man explains that 3 days ago, he and his companions were brought to this place and, amidst the chaos, were captured. He followed them to find his group and eventually encountered Sheila, introducing himself as Jas, a warrior, and extending his hand. One of his companions is Filorga, an assassin, and Rachel, a healer. Sheila introduces himself as Chinjila but says they can simply call him Sheila. Jas asks if Sheila knows how they were brought to this place. Sheila replies that he doesn't, but that Rakadler might know something, while the beastman curses the humans for their ambush, reflecting that sooner or later, he will defeat them all, but notices the humans approaching and questions what they want. saying they are mere insects meant to be food and cannot disrespect God. Sheila calls him by name, making the Beastman question how he knows it. But Sheila continues, saying he has many questions for him, and if he doesn't want to die, he should answer honestly. Rakadler begs, claiming he has told the truth and they should believe him. However, Sheila tells him he already knew everything he said. Rakadler explains that he is a low-ranking member of the tribe and knows little, but that God has captured them as food, and he is simply following orders. Sheila notices thunder roaring in the distance, and all the adventurers are astonished by it. In the city of Delk, someone questions whether Wu Bule has gone mad. They remark that it's been many years and wonder if he truly believes the rumors. Even if they find the palace, they won't know what to do afterward. This man is Hicks, a wind mage, who states he cannot defeat the monsters and says it's unwise to trust in a boy without elemental mastery. Hicks warns Wu Bule of the consequences of angering God, saying the entire village will be in danger, and that they should have simply sent the boy to his end in the beast's den. Thus, he would reflect on his prayer and beg for forgiveness. Wu Bule says it's a joke because Hicks' God allows him to torture everyone like worms and treat them as such, sacrificing innocent people in exchange for so-called peace while the villagers regard them as heroes. But in reality, he's nothing more than dead weight, living off the sacrifices of the weak. Hicks becomes enraged and asks what Wu Bule just said, preparing an elemental attack in his left hand, and declaring he will execute Wu Bule in the name of God. However, Wu Bule merely uses his thunder shield to block the wind attacks, then manifests thunder in his eyes, and orders Hicks to leave, breaking all his attacks without even moving. Hicks questions what he just witnessed. Wu Bule apologizes and says he cannot live at the expense of other sacrifices for peace and will use his strength to leave this place, even if it means fighting their so-called God. Hicks prepares another attack, calling Wu Bule a bastard and telling him not to look down on him. But another hero intervenes, saying that's enough. This surprises Hicks, causing him to stop his action, though he continues cursing Wu Bule in his mind. Sheila reflects on how they treat people as insects, sending them off to become food for Latinea. As a player, he once thought of this place as just a game, but after meeting Sally, Wu Bule, and the others, he no longer sees it that way, because everyone here lives as real humans, not mere NPCs, and he can't abandon their fates. Therefore, he must find Kebli's palace and lead them out. Speaking of Kebli, he recalls the legends describing him as one of the strongest Egyptian gods, the incarnation of Ras-Hen, and wonders about the power of a sealed god. He reflects that this place and Kebli's palace lie in different directions but wonders what is being guarded there. Perhaps another sealed god resides there, but his thoughts are interrupted by Joss, who says everyone is ready. Joss asks if they can head to the Beast's base center now. Sheila nods. As they walk, he reflects that he doesn't know what kind of monsters they might encounter on the way to the Beast's base. But the place feels relatively safe, with everyone in the group interacting while Rakadler is tied up. Joss mentions that Rachel, being a healer, can create a barrier to enhance elemental power damage and will stay behind to protect them. Rachel reassures them not to worry, promising to keep everyone safe until they return. Joss leads them toward the center of the Beast's base. Rakadler begins to warn them, saying that if they go to the Beast's base, they will be eaten by high-level creatures, and later they won't be able to say they weren't warned. Sheila jokes, noting that Rakadler seems more scared of being eaten than they are. Rakadler retorts, asking what he means, declaring he's not a cowardly beast. But Joss yanks the rope sharply, telling him to stop talking and start walking, as Rakadler protests that they're asking for death just by going there and pleads to negotiate instead. Screams of people begging to be saved can be heard. Numerous monsters gather in a room filled with skeletons, while other beastmen carry humans in cages. The beasts kneel before a throne, declaring that this is today's food and asking for orders. Their king simply watches, until a freezing explosion shatters the cage, easily freezing the beastmen, paralyzing dozens of monsters in place due to the frost. A mage introduces himself as Ngam and tells the people not to be afraid, promising to lead them outside, saying he and the other heroes will defeat all the monsters and escort them to safety. Ngam reflects that sending people to their deaths out of greed is unforgivable. He releases energy, declaring that he will make them pay, activating his magic, Storm of Freezing Blades, against the king. The blades continue their trajectory toward the throne, but they are stopped by a barrier in front of it. Ngam is shocked and asks how that happened. However, he begins to levitate, surrounded by green energy, slowly rising into the air and contorting. The people wonder what is happening to him. As Ngam begins emanating strange energy from his mouth, the king finally moves his finger, causing the mage's body to fill with blood, then exploding him into pieces. The heroes accompanying Ngam begin trembling in fear. Standing before the Beast King Sunil, level 85, Joss takes down a monster with his kick. Meanwhile, everyone in the group begins challenging those gigantic beasts, and Gila readies his sword. The beast starts roaring, trying to scare off the group, but it is cut down by Gila wielding his Ozil sword, falling headless in front of Rakadler, who trembles with fear, reflecting that they were incredibly strong, and looks at Gila, noticing that he had grown stronger since the first time they met. Gila merely sheathes his sword while the beast man wonders who he was in the world. The young man reflects that the number of giants was increasing as they got closer to the beastmen's cave, and their levels were higher. Because even though his level had been reset, the amount of experience needed didn't change according to his previous level. And even with the giants giving decent experience, he was leveling up at a slow pace, so he needed to level up. Joss questions if Sheila still wasn't used to the combat power of the giants, since those beasts moved slowly but required immense strength to defeat. However, Sheila was the first who could defeat them without elemental power, and it seemed as if destiny had ordered them to meet. Joss says he admires him, and, if they manage to get out of there, he should consider joining his guild. Sheila asks about the guild, and Joss says his guild was full of beautiful women, and if he joined, he would meet many, but Sheila questions what that meant. However, Philorga interrupts them, asking if Joss wasn't the only one in his guild. Joss gets embarrassed, and asks them to pick up the pace while complaining to Philorga about it, but Philorga points ahead and says that could be the entrance to the beastmen's nest. Sheila and Joss take a moment to observe, seeing a gigantic entrance full of thorns with a blue light illuminating its depths. Sheila turns to ask Rakadler if that was the entrance, but notices the beastman had fled. Joss says he might have run off while they were fighting the giants earlier, and Rakadler runs away, panting, reflecting that he should hurry and tell his king about the human invaders, as he would be greatly rewarded. Sheila, Joss, and Philorga approach the cave. Joss says it really looks like a beastman's nest, and Rakadler probably didn't lie to them, and orders everyone to enter with him. Inside the cave, there are blue flame torches to light the way. Sheila walks with Joss and Philorga until they reach a room. Joss says he feels strange because they've been walking for a long time but haven't seen any beastmen. Philorga tells them to look ahead, seeing 3 narrow paths going in different directions. Joss says it looks like the beasts split up, and he makes a hand sign to Gila, indicating the door of fire. The 3 of them would split up, going into different tunnels, and if they encountered danger, the spell would bring them to the other 2. Joss says they will start, taking the left tunnel, Philorga the right, and Gila the middle, and warns them before entering that if they encounter danger, they should recite the spell he taught them. Thus, the 3 enter their respective paths. Sheila runs towards the middle, reflecting that he should pick up the pace to level up, but there were no beastmen there. Then he notices another entrance within the middle path, getting closer to it and analyzing what it was, noticing a female body on the ground, and a beast feeding on it, along with several other beastmen lying there, sprawled on the ground. Those were digging ghouls, with souls abandoned by God, who fear the sun and are level 47, always found in groups and never alone. Sheila grabs his sword and asks what kind of hell that was, seeing hundreds of ghouls coming out of their holes and heading towards him, and screaming to scare and intimidate him. A beastman appears before the king, addressing him as Lord Finir, and tells him that 3 pests had invaded his cave but fell into the trap of splitting up at that moment. Therefore, they would be pulverized by the ghoul demons waiting in the traps. One of the ghouls lunges at Sheila, screaming, and he notices their power wasn't strong, but there were too many of them, so he could gain considerable experience. Thus, he defeats 10 ghouls with his sword strike, earning 20,000 experience, and moves forward to slay 30 more, gaining 60,000, reflecting that defeating them one by one would be tedious and unproductive, since the experience needed to level up had already increased, and he didn't have much time left. He needed to hurry and move past them. Thus, after defeating 100 ghouls and earning 200,000 experience points, the system notifies him that he had annihilated many ghouls and was now at level 14, but with a hidden level of 50, and had gained 3 skills. The first was the Light of Punishment, which restored 500 health and dealt 500 holy damage to enemies within 3 meters. His second skill was the Holy Slash, which attacked 20 normal enemies within 5 meters, causing 60% critical damage and healing 5% of the damage dealt. And the third was Divine Blessing, which removed all negative effects, increased speed for 40 seconds, and restored 3% health per enemy. Sheila reflects that he should choose 2 of these 3 class skills, and it was a difficult decision based solely on the introductions. He notes that Divine Blessing and Light of Punishment were a good combination, but the combo of Holy Slash and Divine Blessing offered life recovery. Looking at Light of Punishment, while reflecting that, in any case, they were combat skills with healing effects, and he could use Divine Blessing to increase his speed and get closer to enemies. But the range of Light of Punishment was very short and healed little, so it wasn't a good choice. Deciding that he would take Divine Blessing and Holy Slash, the system notifies him that he had acquired the specific class skills he chose and gave up on Light of Punishment. Thus, Gila wonders how Jas and Filorga were doing and whether they faced the same problem as him, as there was no effect on his hand, so they should be fine. However, ghouls start emerging from their dens and advancing while growling. Gila moves forward, deciding he would press on. On the other side of the tunnel, the ghouls roared, while Jas stomps his foot on the ground, activating the Hellfire skill, creating a gigantic flame that prevents the ghouls from advancing, and incinerates them as soon as it hits them. Jas braces his leg while surrounding himself with fire energy, but hears the melody of a song, wondering if someone was singing, and with his hand in his pocket, he notices the ghouls turning around to observe a figure that had just arrived, seeing a feminine foot that had been caged, and a woman approaching him, who was singing and getting closer to Jas. Jas shouts, asking if she was the one controlling the ghouls and sending them to attack him, and declares he would turn her to ashes. But the woman merely smiles, and something begins to emerge, cracking the ground, with several hands grabbing Jas and coming out of the ground. Jas curses, asking if, because of the sound, he couldn't use any strength, but he notices something happening, and sees the beast woman near him, touching his abdomen, and asks what she's doing. The woman says it's been a long time since she tasted a worm, and touches Jas's abdomen above his belt. Jas curses her in his thoughts, and wonders if he was about to kick the bucket in such a pathetic way. But Gila charges in, executing a slash that spills purple blood, and severs both of the beast woman's arms. The hands holding Jas begin to dissolve. Gila says he arrived just in time, and prepares his sword for the next strike. The ghoul woman asks if Delik hadn't finished Gila yet, but Gila throws something at her, asking if she was talking about him, throwing the head of a beast man, saying that he was stronger than the ghouls but still easy to defeat. The woman becomes enraged, and her hair begins to levitate. Then she screams, releasing a sonic wave at Gila. Jas tries to warn him not to let her, but Gila is hit by the sonic wave, and the system notifies him it was a necromancer's enchantment with a paralyzing effect. And the ghoul begins to laugh, saying they were both trapped. But she's surprised and asks what happened, as Gila activates Divine Blessing and cuts her in half. Gila says she's saying very poorly, and Jas reflects that Gila was very strong, as a noise is heard by Jas. Gila also hears the same thing. With the mark on his hand igniting, they realize Filorga was in danger. The level 55 Hell Python was a creature that grew in hell, its body made of fire, which it used for its flaming attacks, and it shoots a blast at Filorga, who blocks it with a barrier. Filorga reflects that the difference between him and the monster was immense, and all he could do was defend against its attacks, as defeating it was impossible. But the stone begins to crack. Filorga complains about this and begs for it not to happen, but an explosion hits the rock and throws him away. The young man crashes his back against the rock, and spits blood from his mouth, falling to the ground injured. Filorga watches the creature approaching and wonders if he was really going to meet his end, until the serpent charges at him with all its might. However, Gila appears, stepping in front of his ally, while swinging his sword, his eyes electrified. Gila cuts the serpent with a swing of his sword, and the python falls to the ground, wounded. Gila observes its severed tail starting to move, and Gila stops moving as the smoke dissipates, apologizing to Filorga for being late. Filorga, panting, reflects that Gila was truly very strong. Jas reflects that in both paths, he and Gila cleared the traps, so this was the real path leading them to the beastmen's nest. Filorga gives a smile and calls out to Jas. However, Jas helps him up, and Filorga says he's fine because he wasn't going to die yet. Nonetheless, the giant serpent was incredibly strong, and he had never seen a creature like that before. They were like monsters from legends. Then he asks if, should they meet the Beast King, Gila would defeat him in a matter of seconds. Gila interrupts them, saying that what would defeat him wouldn't be the Beast King but their fear, leaving Jas and Filorga silent. Gila asserts that fear on the battlefield leads to defeat, calling it just a simple Beast King, and questions what forces they would face after leaving Latinea, for they should do it for their comrades, and to gain freedom. Until their last breath, they must fight without thinking of giving up. The serpent reemerges from the ground, staring at the three adventurers without moving. Gila shouts for them to fight together. Then Jas and Filorga prepare to fight alongside him. Jas approaches the serpent, shouting that he should be the first, while preparing a kick, calling the python a landworm, and land strikes on its tail. The serpent prepares an energy blast to hit Jas, but Jas dodges with ease, while Filorga reflects that he should prepare to unleash his elemental powers. But he couldn't burn himself again, and now he wanted to give it his all, thus unleashing his move called Buddha's Palm, creating a giant stone hand that advances toward the serpent, and grabs it by the neck, holding it, while Jas calls out to Gila to move forward. Gila sighs as a white energy surrounds him, and jumps from atop a cliff, while holding his sword ready to pierce, leaping toward the gigantic serpent, and piercing the top of its head, causing a small wound in the area of the Ozil's sword. The system notifies that the Infernal Serpent's armor was damaged by 20%, and Gila prepares Ozil again to strike the serpent, thus hitting its skull again. The serpent's armor gets damaged with each strike from Gila, reaching 50% damage. Then he manages to inflict 80% damage and finally 100%, completely destroying the serpent's armor. Gila starts moving his sword across the serpent's head, and shouts as he performs this action, cutting everything in his path until he slices it completely, and blood gushes as he walks, then falling from atop the serpent after finishing slicing it, sheathing his sword as the serpent is defeated. Joss cheers, shouting that the serpent had finally been defeated, while the system notifies that Sheila had earned 200,000 experience points and leveled up, receiving an item called the Inferno Gloves, which grant 15 strength, 15 constitution, 10 magic, and 35 fire damage, with no special abilities. Sheila reflects that he gained equipment that boosts his attributes significantly, and the system asks if he wants to equip them. The young man agrees, equipping the Inferno Gloves on his hands. Joss reflects that they had only split up a few hours ago, yet Sheila had undergone a tremendous transformation, wondering what on earth had happened, and wanting to know who Sheila was in this world. However, a noise is heard at the entrance to the next layer of the cave. Sheila, Joss, and Filorga are startled when they hear it, and Rakadler, who had been watching, peeks his head around, looking. Sheila and Joss exchange glances, and then both deliver a kick to Rakadler's head. Rakadler has another flash of what would be his funeral, being thrown far away by the two young men. Joss questions if he had delivered himself into their hands. Rakadler says he had just come out, and that his king had activated the traps. Sheila wonders about the traps since they hadn't encountered more monsters. Rakadler stands up and says they were lucky to still be alive, but Joss kicks him and tells him to leave, questioning where the Beast King was and declaring that if they didn't take him to the king, he would defeat Rakadler right there. Rakadler then agrees and says he will reveal the path, as the entrance was nearby. Thus, they move forward, and Joss warns him that if he's planning anything suspicious, he will castrate him. Rakadler, however, begins to recite a strange incantation, causing the massive door in front of them to move, opening up to the group of people, and revealing an entrance for the four of them. Meanwhile, a storm was raging in the village. Wu Bule moves inside his house, walking toward a wardrobe in the corner, and opening it, looking at its contents while shirtless, seeing a full set of armor inside. Bo Ban, standing by the door, says that after much hesitation, he finally opened it, because in the past, Wu Bu never let him and Sally near that room, but they had always been curious about its contents, so this was Wu Bu's battle armor. Wu Bule wonders when Bo Ban had arrived, as he hadn't noticed him, while Bo Ban remarks that the armor had been sealed by Wu Bu's desire to leave. He knew a team would be formed to leave Latinea and that he might find the monster that defeated his parents, so he had trained for years for this. Bo Ban says he wants to join him, and, at this moment, he won't stop him. Meanwhile, Joss warns Rakadler that he better not try any more tricks, because if he did, he would be defeated, and Rakadler says he wouldn't, and that up ahead was the Beast Nest Hall, where the Beast King resided. Sheila asks if he knows where all the people who were kidnapped are. Rakadler confirms, saying he is very familiar with the place. Sheila moves ahead and tells Joss that after entering the Beast Nest Hall, he and Filorga should go with Rakadler to rescue their companions. Joss asks if he was insinuating that Filorga and he would just get in the way, but says not to think too highly of himself just because he was saved, as he wasn't strong enough. Sheila says that wasn't what he meant, but he notices several danger warnings from the system, which says an undetectable enemy had been found and that, with his current strength, the chances of survival and victory were only 10%, asking if he would accept the mission. Sheila reflects that the chance was only 10%, and he had tried his best to level up but hadn't gained elemental power, making the success rate so low. Filorga asks what's wrong with Sheila, but Sheila says he doesn't want to involve innocents because of his problems and that after they enter, they should rescue their companions immediately, as he will negotiate. Joss shouts that there's no way that's happening, because he never abandons a companion, and won't leave him alone in a dangerous situation like this. Sheila warns them that the monster wasn't as easy as they thought, and that his chances of victory were only 10%. Joss asks if that's all, because if they hadn't been rescued, they would have been defeated long ago, and even with a small chance of victory, he wouldn't abandon him. Sheila observes them as they say this, and reflects that when he grew up at school, learning kendo, he solved every problem he encountered but always felt lonely. But now, he no longer felt alone. Rakadler tells them to look ahead, as the hall is right in front of them, and warns them to stay there because the Beast King would defeat them. Joss, Sheila, and Filorga prepare to enter, looking at the hall they are about to step into. Rakadler says it's fine if they want to kick the bucket, but he doesn't, while Sheila agrees with Joss. Thus, they enter the Beast King's hall, watching the entrance without much concern. Standing before an empty throne, Sheila notes it's strange and that no one is there. So he asks Rakadler if his king isn't there, and Rakadler says he doesn't know what's happening, as this room has always been heavily guarded. However, they hear a noise coming from the door. Sheila and Joss shift their attention to the source of the sound. Looking at the room behind them, Thalorga begins to levitate while screaming. The assassin asks what's happening as his companions call out to him. Thalorga is left aside as Sheila watches what's about to happen. Seeing the level 85 Beast King Finnair, and Thalorga starts coughing up blood. Sheila becomes furious at this. He charges forward, leaping off the ground, rushing at the Beast King with all his speed without thinking, aiming to strike his head with the Ozil sword. But a barrier stops him from hitting the Beast King. Sheila continues pressing the barrier with Ozil, trying to break it. But the Beast King simply places his finger on the barrier, effortlessly throwing him far away. Thalorga finally collapses to the ground after this, while Joss runs to save him, falling to the ground while holding his companion in his arms. Joss asks if Thalorga is okay, but there is no response. Sheila questions how long the Beast King had been sitting there, and reflects that his earlier strike had failed completely. Thalorga moves his hand, using the earth element. Joss tells him not to push himself as the young man moves, but Thalorga says it's fine and urges them to press forward. He then creates a gigantic stone structure that launches Joss forward. Joss hovers on the structure as his legs ignite with fire. Finnear merely watches the human's actions without reacting, as Joss leaps to attack the Beast King's barrier, executing an acrobatic move to increase the impact of his strike. Thalorga tries to move his hand to hurl the structure along with his ally. Both collide with the Beast King, Finnear, but he merely stares at the attacks without reacting. Meanwhile, Sheila prepares for an attack from behind the king's throne, making a horizontal slash with Ozil, causing an explosion around the Beast King Finnear's throne. When the explosion clears, only minor damage remains on the barrier. Sheila wonders what happened, as the barrier is still standing, while the Beast King Finnear smirks. He raises his right hand imbued with magic, and his left hand glows with the same energy. Sheila is impressed by this power. Joss has the same reaction. Then, an explosion occurs in the throne's area. Joss tries to stay on the barrier, but he is blown away alongside Thalorga. Sheila manages to stay, shielding himself from the explosion with the Ozil's sword. Rakadler shouts that the Beast King is so cool, while Sheila curses, reflecting on the terrifying offensive power. Meanwhile, Joss, injured, gets up alongside Thalorga. Sheila asks if his allies are okay, and Joss replies they are. He then wonders about the Beast King's ability, and what he will do next. But they hear the laughter of the Beast King Finnear, drawing their attention. Finnear rises from his throne, laughing loudly. He says that a group of insects like them is amusing and that he will play with them a little. Smoke begins to surround them, and Finnear vanishes from his throne. Sheila wonders where he went and notices his ability. Looking around, he tries to understand what happened. But Joss is hit by Finnear's blast, and Sheila warns him to be careful. Finnear stands before Joss, frightening the warrior. Joss is stunned in front of the monster, but the Beast King strikes him in the abdomen, causing him to fall to the ground, spitting blood. Joss looks at the king, panting, unable to react, and tries to throw a punch with his fire energy. But a scream is heard as the Beast King twists his hand. Joss begins spitting blood from his teeth while sweating. He then jumps to deliver a sidekick to Finnear. Finnear merely observes the incoming strike, and blocks it with his arm. This causes Joss to spit even more blood, falling to the ground completely injured before the Beast King Finnear. Finnear looks to the side, then steps on Joss, releasing a dust explosion, while Thalorga screams for his injured ally. Finnear finishes stomping, but Joss's body is no longer there. Then he turns toward Sheila, seeing that he had saved Joss, with Thalorga running toward him. Thalorga calls out to Joss, and Sheila asks him to take care of their friend. Joss apologizes for being a burden, and Thalorga tells him not to move. Sheila simply draws the Ozil sword and says to leave the rest to him, because he is going to send that bastard straight to the afterlife, completely enraged. Finnear laughs, saying they are just appetizer worms, but Sheila wonders if he will try the same move again. The Beast King rushes at Sheila, aiming a punch, creating a massive dust wave where his fist lands. But Sheila blocks it with his bare hand, showing little reaction, using the inferno gloves on his fingers. Sheila says that with his abilities, there's no way the king surpasses him in speed or strength. Thalorga and Joss watch the fight from a distance. Joss reflects that Sheila had stopped the monster's attack so easily, and even if he trained for another 10 years, he wouldn't be a match for the Beast King. Sheila was simply too strong. Junior says it's surprising, as it's the first time a worm has stood against his attack, and it's becoming more interesting. However, a worm is still a worm, and Ji Li's resistance would only add to his fun as he prepares magic on his finger. He then fires it at the young man to cause damage. Sheila blocks the strike with his weapon, saying Junior could save the surprise for when he loses his head, as he would make him pay for what he did to his friends. He then activates Divine Blessing and charges forward. Junior is impressed by what's coming at him. When Gila attempts to slash his arm vertically with Ozil, but Junior dodges, making the young man lunge again, and try several slashes against the king, saying this one is for Filorga, while his eyes emit electricity, striking Junior with a punch to the chest, as he prepares a slash with his sword, saying this one is for Jas, using Holy Slash and electrifying the Beast King Junior, making his crown fall to the ground. Junior appears behind Gila, ready to grab the young man's head, but Gila moves his eyes backward, shifting his field of vision, while using the electric strike, cutting the king, even slicing through a rock behind them, and then stopping on the ground. Sheila reflects that this strike was for all the innocent people. Filorga and Jas watch Sheila fight, completely impressed, while Rakivler thinks he was incredibly strong. But an explosion occurs where the Beast King had fallen, making him rise again, enraged, walking toward the young man. Rakivler says that this was the Beast King's elemental power, and that they were doomed, while Gila looks at him, asking if that was truly his elemental power. Observing the youthful appearance of the king before him, Junior looks to the side, moving his finger and commanding, summoning a gigantic skull staff that moves toward the young man, and creating an army of spectral wolves from its shadow to charge at him. Gila is amazed by this action of the king, and prepares his sword, striking the head of one of the elemental spectral wolves. But Junior continues preparing his staff, using magic, giving a malicious smile in front of the young man, and grabbing him to strike mercilessly. However, Gila notices the aerial strike, which hits him, causing a dust explosion on the ground, making Ozil float and then fall, hitting the ground. Filorga and Jas shield themselves from the explosion's dust, while Rakivler hides behind a rock. Blood begins to drip onto the ground. Gila, injured, spits blood while panting heavily. He begins to hold his injured arm, rising to his feet. Junior watches him with a smile, doing nothing, but moves his left hand using magic, and pulls his staff into his hand, creating an immense green aura in front of the young man. Gila starts to move his hand, reflecting that he couldn't move his body anymore, having already used his skills, wondering if this was the end. As Junior transforms into a creature with white hair and a mask on his face, and prepares to charge at the young man with everything he has, throwing himself at him, hurling him against the wall with force, then leaping toward him, and kicking his abdomen hard to knock him out. Sheila is severely injured by this sequence of attacks, and falls to the ground as Junior lands heavily, charging toward the young man again, delivering several quick strikes with his murderous green aura, making Gila finally collapse to the ground, bleeding and unresponsive, on the verge of death. Junior creates two green energy sides to try to attack the young man, saying he was a useless worm destined to perish and should accept his fate, while Gila wonders if his time has run out. Remembering all the insults, from comments about his name sounding like an insect to being called a nerd and being unable to escape the game. And finally, he remembers his mother's face calling his name, telling his younger self to come back home with her. However, a black aura explosion occurs, and Ozil begins to lose its wrapping. Filorga and Jas are stunned by what's happening, as Ozil transforms into a massive black sword. Junior observes all this, unmoving, while Gile's hair turns white, and black bands start to surround him. He positions the sword behind him and prepares to strike. Gila now has a black eye and begins to study his enemy. Then a white aura begins to surround Gila completely. A voice starts repeatedly calling Gila to wake up. Gila finds himself in a space where he can't do anything. He reflects that he was in a battle with the Beast King earlier, and wonders where he is now. But he notices something in front of him, seeing a white place he recognizes. Gila wonders if he had been in the afterlife this whole time, but a voice tells him he hasn't. A figure with white hair and a sword at his waist appears, calling Gila by name. Gila asks how he knows his name, and who he is exactly, but the figure responds that he also wants to know who he is. However, the fact remains that he woke up there and forgot what happened over the years, losing track of time. Gila reflects that, when he woke up, a voice emerged in his mind, someone from the future guiding him out of there. And that person was Gila himself. Gila asks him to be clearer, saying he doesn't understand, and demands he explain what he needs to do to leave this place. The man moves his hand, telling Gila to accept him, and kneels before the young man, asking him to become his master, because the voice in his mind told him he needed to help this person, and together they could leave that place. He then begs Gila to become his master. Gila asks if it's something so complicated and agrees, telling him to hurry up and get him out of there. The man gives a sly smile. As Gila shakes his extended hand, an aura begins to surround Gila, and black marks appear on his body, consuming his eye and returning him to the battle against Junior. Gila reflects that the man hadn't lied and really brought him back, and it seemed that some kind of power was constantly emerging in his body, making him wonder if it was the man's effect. The system announces that he has gained the power of the chaotic element, which makes him question. He reflects that this must be it, and that old man was his elemental power. Junior wonders how this is possible, as the insect wasn't even injured after everything. Yet it seemed he had become much stronger than before. The system states that, thanks to the activation of elemental power, his abilities have been enhanced, and he has gained the Extinguish elemental skill. It sacrifices 90% of his life for 5 minutes of chaotic attacks, dealing true damage and ignoring defense, consuming 100 life points per minute. And the elemental power had removed the seal from his weapon, Ozeal, which now grants 250 strength, 150 life, 100 resistance, and 30 intelligence. Sheila reflects that his grandfather's sword required elemental power, but he hadn't expected such an increase in attributes. However, now that he had gained elemental power, it also activated his grandfather Wu Bulei's sword, and now he could begin his counterattack, charging at Junior while wielding Ozeal. Junior creates a barrier, saying that a mere worm dares challenge him and asking if he thinks they're on the same level. But his barrier is shattered by a single strike from Ji Li's sword, which causes an explosion at the point of impact with ease. As the smoke begins to dissipate, Junior's green eye emerges from the dust, leaping with his scythe toward Ji Li, trying to strike him. As he wonders how it's possible that he can't defeat an insect, and tells himself it's impossible because he used all his strength and will cut him to pieces. But Ji Li interrupts his thoughts, moving his sword against Junior and using the elemental charge. Junior's last thoughts are that all of this is impossible, but Ji Li uses Extinguish, causing blood to spill from his shoulder. He reflects that 90% of his life has been consumed, and he swings his sword, completely breaking Junior apart, severing the Beast King's head from his body. The system congratulates him for annihilating the Beast King Junior and awards him 400,000 experience points, leveling up. It also grants him a black treasure chest for completing the Beast King's mission, along with 500,000 experience points, leveling him up again. In the village, Wu Bulei begins pulling plants from the river next to Bo Ban, telling him to work diligently and stop slacking, while Bo Ban says he isn't slacking and never worked like this when he was younger. Sally eats an apple under a tree while wondering if Sheila will come soon, as it has already been 3 days. Wu Bulei says it will happen in a few hours, but a tremor begins to be felt by the three of them, releasing a greenish energy throughout the area, which repels Wu Bulei and Bo Ban. Bo Ban asks the old man what is happening, while Sally approaches and asks if everything is okay and what's going on. Wu Bulei explains that when a high-level monster is annihilated, an energy wave is produced, and the source of this energy came from the Beastman's nest. He then reflects that Sheila must have gained his elemental power and defeated the Beast King. At the center of the energy explosion, it engulfs the entire cavern where the three of them are. Rakadler weeps, saying his lord had been defeated, while Filorga reflects that if he hadn't seen it with his own eyes, he wouldn't believe that someone so powerful could exist. Joss notices that such combat power had appeared in an instant, wondering if Sheila had been hiding his power all along. Sheila can't believe he defeated such a terrifying enemy, and even more frightening than the enemy was obtaining his own terrible elemental power, wondering if the man was now inside his body. But his thoughts are interrupted by Filorga calling out to him, who asks what's wrong and why he's standing apart when he had already won. Sheila says he's fine and notes that both Filorga and Joss are severely injured, urging them to go rescue their companions. Joss observes him and nods, while Sheila calls Rakadler and orders him to hurry and lead them to where the others are imprisoned. Rakadler complies. Sheila realizes he has won, but he feels no joy due to lingering doubts, questioning the old man and wondering if all this started when he entered the game, or if it was all orchestrated by someone, asking himself what in the world was going on while his eye trembles. Sheila collapses to the ground, but Wu Bulei steps forward, catching the young man before he falls. Sheila calls out to his grandfather Wu Bulei, and tells him he completed his mission. After that, someone calls out to Sheila, who is lying in bed, telling him to wake up. His mother says it's already late, and asks if he plans to sleep all day. The young man starts crying, asking if he has returned. However, his mother says she has prepared a meal with all his favorite dishes. Sheila hugs her tightly, calling her Mom, and says he has come back while crying, but someone questions what he's doing. It's Bo Ban, who is being hugged by him. Bo Ban asks why he hugged him so suddenly, saying it scared him, and Sheila steps back. The assassin explains that it was because of his promise to the old man to take care of him, so he shouldn't confuse things, as he still wanted to face him. He tells Sheila to stay put and not move because he's going to inform his grandfather and Sally. Sheila wonders if it was all a dream and how he had returned since he remembers seeing Wu Bulei at the end. Then he wonders about Joss and Filorga but feels a sharp pain in his head. The system notifies him that he has an unopened chest and several points earned by leveling up without opening it, and Sheila realizes it's the Beast King's chest. He remembers receiving a key after defeating Bo Ban, so he can use it to open the Beast King's mission chest, eager to see what's inside. Finally, he opens the mysterious treasure chest, and the system asks for a moment, congratulating him for earning 135,000 accumulated experience and various items, including Centaur boots, Fallen Knight's breastplate, and Mithril breastplate. He also obtains the legendary item called Finir's Protection Ring, which grants +10 to all attributes and a protection skill. The system then informs him he has acquired the secret legendary item. Amazed, Sheila observes the notification, but notices it's an egg and reflects on whether he should eat it. The egg begins to crack, and Sheila wonders if it will be some kind of pet for him. Out comes a small child. Sheila questions if the legendary item was a little child that hatched from the egg, but the child jumps onto Sheila and starts calling him Daddy, repeating it several times while clinging to his face, making Sheila question his newfound fatherhood. Sheila asks the system what on earth the child is and requests it to check if it has any special abilities. While wondering why the reward from a chest turned out to be a child, the system states that living creatures are not identified and must be managed. Sheila asks if he should take the child to the temple, but the child climbs onto Ji Li's head, calling him Dad, and he tells the child to get down because he isn't his father. However, the baby begins to climb down Ji Li's body and along his arm. Sheila gets frustrated and says that this had gone too far. He grabs the child by the leg, telling him again that he's not his father, and asks what on earth this kid is, but then decides to ask Sally and his grandfather if they could take care of him. The little child makes a grumpy face. Sheila wonders what that expression could mean, but a shockwave stuns both of them as the child begins to cry. Sheila asks the child to stop crying and questions if he's hurt, but the boy doesn't stop, releasing a blue energy outward. The system announces that, due to his intent to abandon the living creature, punishment would begin and last 30 minutes from the countdown. Sheila is shocked and questions what the punishment is as the countdown reaches 4. When it finally reaches 1, the baby emits energy from his mouth and eyes, releasing a light while Sheila complains about not being warned about the punishment. However, he opens his eyes and asks if that was all, but he finds himself in a frozen place and wonders where he has been sent. Sheila begs the child to stop crying, promising not to abandon him, but says he's still a high school student and doesn't know how to take care of him. A noise then catches Ji Li's attention. He sees 2 ice predators of level 40 and elite class. Sheila is stunned and questions how they could be elite level monsters. The system instructs him to annihilate all the monsters within 30 minutes. If he exceeds the time limit, the number will double, and he must protect the child. Sheila wonders why the system would attack him if he failed to protect the child, but one of the monsters aims an energy blast at the child. Sheila grabs the child to shield him, planting his foot firmly on the ground to stabilize himself, successfully defending the child. Sheila tells the child not to die on him and to hold onto his neck. He then activates his elemental power, drawing the Ozil's sword, declaring that he'll handle the battle while the child clings to his neck. Meanwhile, Wubule comments that Sally went to town to get food but hasn't returned and asks how Sheila is doing. Bo Ban replies that Sheila is fine and as energetic as usual. Still, Wubule says he wants to know the progress of assembling a team to head to the temple, but it's harder than he thought. He explains that everyone is believing the lies of Hicks and others, fearing the so-called gods that disturb the peace of their towns. Bo Ben asks if it wouldn't cause problems if he couldn't recruit anyone and managed to leave that place. Wubule notes that the monsters are stronger than they expected, and he isn't 100% confident. So he decides it's better to go check on Sheila, as he might have something to share about what happened. Sally approaches the two and asks what they're talking about. Wubule calls her Lily and remarks that she's back. Bo Ban mentions Sheila waking up, and Sally asks if Bo Ban has been taking good care of him. She says they should hurry and check on him because she wants to know what kind of elemental power Sheila was able to awaken. She quickly grabs her grandfather's hand, urging him to hurry as fast as possible. Bo Ban watches this scene without any facial expression. In the punishment zone, purple blood drips onto the ice-covered rocks, with several monsters lying on the ground, sliced in half. One of them is cut down by Sheila using his extinction power. He slices another one in half and finally finishes the battle. The system announces that he has completed the mission and the countdown has ended. Exhausted, Sheila breathes heavily, while the child hanging from his neck celebrates. Sheila reflects that if he truly is the father, he must be ready for this. He then reappears at the house. Sheila feels relieved and says he's finally back. But Sally opens the door and sees Sheila holding the child and gripping the awakened Ozil. Sally looks at the child and asks Sheila a question, wanting to know where this little boy came from. But she picks him up, saying he's extremely cute as she walks around the house laughing. Sally asks again where the little boy came from, saying she loves him so much. Sheila explains that he came from an egg, and Sally asks if he's joking because she's never heard of a child coming from an egg. The young man reflects on how exactly that child came out of an egg and realizes he cannot send her away because he would be punished. wondering what sin he had committed. Wu Bulei appears and asks Sally what happened, as he heard a commotion from a mile away. Sally holds the child and says Sheila brought her from somewhere, asking if she wasn't cute. As Bo Ban and Wu Bulei approach the child, Bo Ban asks why he hadn't seen any child when he came earlier, wondering if this was some kind of joke. But Sheila says she was under the bed while reflecting that, if he told them the truth, they wouldn't understand, so it was better not to explain. Wu Bulei tells Sheila to get up and stop making noise, ordering him to prepare food, as they would talk while eating. Sally places the little one on the ground and tells her to behave since her big sister is going to make a delicious meal, and the child nods. Outside, Bo Ben asks Sally if she was thinking of being his girlfriend, but Sally says she hadn't even considered it in the first place. Sheila looks down, seeing the child tugging on his pants, asking for food. Sheila asks if she's hungry and tells her to wait, as the food is being prepared and she'll eat soon. Wu Bulei apologizes to Sheila. Sheila doesn't understand and asks why he's apologizing for no reason. Wu Bulei explains that he was careless and thought it was just an ordinary nest, but Sheila got hurt because of the high-level monster. Sheila says it wasn't his fault since he chose to take on that mission. And without that mission, he wouldn't have experienced the things he did and wouldn't know that his coming here wasn't an accident. During the battle, nearly dead, he was teleported to another dimension, where a strange man declared himself his master, and he accepted. Thus, he gained chaotic elemental power, and everything that happened might have been planned beforehand. He asks Wu Bulei if he knows anything about it or about someone gaining elemental power after entering a strange dimension. Wu Bulei denies it, saying no one has ever gained elemental power in such a way or met anyone like that. However, the chaotic elemental power Sheila spoke of was mentioned in a book from millennia ago, but had never been seen before. Sheila asks what the book said and if it could explain why he ended up here. The legend tells of 10 millennia ago, when the evil god Morpheus descended into the mortal realm. He caused chaos and evil across the world, and for survival, humanity waged war against him. Morpheus was extremely powerful, and humans barely breached his defenses. However, a human appeared, a savior, who possessed chaotic power no human had ever seen before. Hesiod formed an army to fight the evil god, and after decades, he finally defeated Morpheus, and sealed his soul in Tartarus forever. But in return, Hesiod had to remain there for eternity. Sheila asks if the person he met could have been Hesiod. Wu Bulei reflects that if Sheila gained chaotic elemental power, then it's very likely he met Hesiod. Sally interrupts, asking what they're talking about because the food is ready. Wu Bulei acknowledges and says they're coming, but he tells Sheila that after gaining this insight into the story, it's better not to tell anyone what he shared with him. Sheila simply nods in respect. Sally had prepared a gigantic dinner filled with delicious dishes for her companions. With the child on his head, Sheila says Sally is amazing. Sally replies that she was helped, so the praise should go to someone else. Rakadler thanks her for recognizing him. Sheila asks why Rakadler followed them there. Rakadler explains that it was Wu Bulei who brought him there. He then places the food on the table and tells them to hurry up and eat. Wu Bulei explains that they didn't know much about what was happening in Latinea and that Rakadler knew everything, so he brought him along, while Bo Ban takes notes on everything Sally likes. The child climbs onto Rakadler and starts tugging on his ear, as he sarcastically says how amazing it is. Sheila asks what happened to the two in the cave since they were his battle companions. Sally says her grandfather sent them to the city's treatment center, and that they would see them after eating. Sheila simply nods. The group converses normally inside the house while Rakadler reveals that cooking is his hobby. On the mountain above the house, someone finally arrives. It was Hicks along with his assassins. One of Hicks' assassins says that Wu Bulei and his group were inside. Hicks says he will return to report this to his lord. A dragon flies through the sky, descending in a sharp dive, and entering the underworld to approach a structure. Inside, a flower was growing, carefully held, alongside a man tending to it while admiring its beauty, until the dragon arrives. The man greets him and says that Argolis has finally arrived. Argolis addresses the man as Hades and asks why he was summoned so urgently. Hades explains that Finir's energy has disappeared from Latinea, and he suspects he might have been defeated. Argolis questions who could have defeated Finir, as no one there was capable of such a feat. Hades says he knows, which is why he's sending Argolis to investigate and uncover what happened, as Finir was guarding an important seal. Argolis agrees to Hades' order and says he will head to Latinea immediately. As they walk through the city, Sheila recounts everything that happened in the Beastmen's nest, and Sally praises him, saying it was incredible. Bo Ban asks what was so incredible, claiming he could have done the same if he had gone. Sheila counters that Bo Ban would only have gone to retrieve his own body if he had been sent, prompting Bo Ban to propose another challenge. Sally interrupts and asks what elemental power Sheila awakened to defeat the Beast King. Sheila says he's not sure what element it was and asks which elements are associated with priests. Sally explains that priests generally have light powers but mentions she has also seen priests with other elements. Sheila guesses that he probably awakened some kind of typical light element, and Bo-ban remarks that it's obvious he merely awakened a light element. Sheila reflects that, based on what Wu-Bule told him, he cannot reveal his chaotic element to anyone. Sally informs them they've arrived at the treatment center in the city of Delks. They see a large institution resembling a hospital. Sally and Bo-ban enter, with Sally urging Sheila to hurry. Sheila reflects that he hopes the two are doing well. Then he steps onto the ground of the place, which emanates a green light, activating a magical symbol beneath him. Sheila questions what is happening. As the treatment center's doors close swiftly, Sally wonders why Sheila is being so slow when she doesn't see him. She looks back, wondering where he went. Sheila searches his surroundings and questions what has happened this time, and where he suddenly is, along with the child. Hicks appears and tells him not to be alarmed, as he only teleported him there. He explains that he is the defender of Latinea, and that portal is accessible only to the greatest talents. Sheila says he just passed by and isn't interested in power, wanting to know why he was brought there. Hicks says he knows Sheila defeated the Beast King and wants him to join him, offering power, wealth, or beauty, as they could grant him anything he desired. Sheila apologizes, saying he's not interested in any of those things and simply wants to leave. Hicks reflects that Sheila is similar to Wu-Bule, but his lord insisted he meet him, and Hicks thinks it's a waste of time. He reflects on how people would betray their own comrades out of greed, and says he'll give Sheila another chance, warning that if he refuses, he will send him to the afterlife right now. Sheila activates the Mark of Chaos and says he'll also give Hicks one more chance because he wants to see Sally and the others, or Hicks will meet his end here. Hicks begins preparing an elemental spell to launch at Sheila. Outside the treatment center, children are playing. Sally wonders where Sheila is, as they agreed to see Joss and Filorga together. Bo-ban, however, smells something and wonders what the odor is. He looks back and tells Sally to be alert. Something suddenly comes towards Sally. A hand grabs her from behind. Bo-ban pulls her toward him and protects her with his elemental power. A clone of Sally is hit by the attack instead. Bo-ban asks if she's okay, and Sally thanks him. The shadow assassin says it doesn't matter who it is. If they hurt Sally, they'll have to deal with him. Then, a hooded figure appears in front of them, carrying several black swords on their back. Meanwhile, Hicks uses wind inside the room against Sheila, but the young man dodges all the gusts while protecting his child. He performs an acrobatic move and slams his hand on the ground to catch the boy as he falls, dodging another gust from Hicks while holding him. Sheila reflects that it's impossible to attack while carrying a child, but the boy cheers, calling him Daddy. Sheila wonders how the boy could be so happy in a moment like this. Hicks says Sheila is a bit stronger than he expected but still just an appetizer. Sheila asks if he offended him, and why Hicks wants to defeat him, as they were working together to defeat the monsters outside. Hicks simply smiles, then bursts into laughter, questioning their plan to defeat the monsters. He asks if Wu-Bule never told Sheila the truth about the desert, saying they made a deal with the monsters to send some citizens to be consumed so the creatures wouldn't hunt outside the city. Wu-Bule had agreed to this back then, sacrificing the weak for peace. Sheila asks if, from the beginning, they never intended to leave Latinea and if this was just an excuse to send people into the abyss. Hicks questions if it wasn't a smart plan since it was perfect, asking if Sheila would join them. He explains the monsters were sent by God, making them undefeatable, and Wu-Bule was just a hypocrite trying to defy God. Sheila says he has no interest in cowardly schemes and that he believes in Wu-Bule. All he wants is to go home and doesn't care about Hicks' plan. He declares that anything in his way, human or monster, will be utterly destroyed. Hicks mocks him, saying he talks a big game. Sheila places the child on the ground, telling him to stay put and not go anywhere, promising to return soon. He stands up and turns to Hicks. Hicks tells him not to worry because he'll take care of both Sheila and the brat. But Hicks is quickly struck in the stomach by Sheilai's attack. Hicks looks down, his eyes bleeding from the force of the blow. He notices Sheila, visibly stressed by his nonsensical words. Sheila prepares his fist again, striking Hicks repeatedly with ease. He lands a powerful punch to Hicks' chest, sending him flying and destroying the entire room in his path. Sheila holds his stance after landing the blow. Hicks crashes to the ground, coughing up blood. He asks how Sheila did this, wondering who exactly Sheila is as the young man slowly approaches him. People begin evacuating the treatment center as the fight intensifies. An explosion occurs outside the center. Sally uses her fire powers to burn her opponent, but the hooded figure evades by throwing himself backward. Bo-ban charges at him with shadow weapons and multiple clones, using his shadow strike to try and slash the figure, but the man blocks with a sword made of his power. Bo-ban calls to Sally, saying it's time. Sally moves behind their opponent, using her fire dance attack, exploding everything in her path. Another explosion consumes the treatment center once again. Sally, exhausted and panting, observes the aftermath, having created a volcano-like crater. But she realizes it's impossible because she clearly hit her target. Bo-ban notices and questions if it might have been a clone. Suddenly, the hooded figure appears behind Sally. Bo-ban realizes the danger. As Sally turns to see what's happening, the hooded man raises his hand to attack Sally, but he's thrown back by a kick from Gila. The hooded figure lands on the ground, facing Gila. Gila declares that he doesn't care who the man is or his motives, but if he dares to attack his friends, Gila won't let him. The hooded figure observes him from afar. Seeing Gila staring at him with unyielding determination, he vanishes using his powers. Sally asks what happened and where the figure went, but Gila says it's complicated and promises to explain later, emphasizing that they need to return, because Wu Bule is also in trouble. At his home in the village, Wu Bule reflects that if Sheila truly possesses chaotic elemental power, then, according to the ancient prophecy, demons and gods will descend upon the earth, plunging the world into endless darkness. The one who possesses chaotic elemental power would be the only one capable of saving the world. Sheila finally opens the door, alongside Sally and Bo-ban, who greet Wu Bule. Wu Bule asks if they have already returned and if they found their friends so quickly. While the tea boils, Wu Bule asks if they were attacked inside the treatment center. Sally asks if Wu Bule knew them. Wu Bule explains that the one Sheila encountered was the Wind Mage Hicks, and the ones Sally and Bo-ban met were the Dark Mage Lucius. He adds that these three were the guardians of that city. Bo-ban asks why the guardians would attack them. Wu Bule explains that Hicks, Lucius, Salkia, and the strongest mage, Dorap, were heroes who came to Latinea centuries ago and built that city. Latinea was said to be a place more terrible than hell, where people needed to possess monsters to secure some semblance of human refuge and food. Because of this, humans turned on each other, and children lived just for scraps of food. When humans lost hope, Dorap came to them and led them to the last remaining oasis, distributing the people and teaching them how to cultivate. Thus, he led them away from the threat, but if the monsters outside were provoked, the entire village would be endangered because of them. Sheila asks why Wu Bule never told them that the city's peace came at the cost of sacrificing lives. Bo-ban wants to know what Sheila means by that. Sheila explains that the mages sacrificed innocence for a false peace and wants to know if Wu Bule was aware of it. He asks why Wu Bule didn't tell them the truth from the beginning, and questions if he agreed to use innocent lives to bargain for peace with a clear conscience. Sally reprimands Sheila, saying Wu Bule isn't like that because he was one of the 12 heroes. But Wu Bule says that's enough and that Sheila didn't lie because he silently consented to it all. Bo-ban and Sally are surprised and question what he means. Wu Bule says he doesn't abandon those he loves but would choose the world without hesitation, even though no one wants to lose loved ones for strangers. He asks Sheila if he agrees with that, because before, they used Sally and Bo-ban to threaten him, and it was a delicate balance, as he didn't want to see the two of them perish in front of him. He says he wanted to choose justice but couldn't bear to see the two of them die. Because Bo-ban and Sally are the most important people in his life, and to allow them to live, he had no other choice. Sheila says that if he were alone, he wouldn't allow this, even at the cost of his own life, because he isn't a coward afraid of death. He argues that someone must be strong enough to protect their loved ones with justice and reason, without having to make such a choice. Then he tells Wu Bule that he chose this path because there was no other choice but to defeat the 4 guardians and protect Sally and Bo-ban. Bo-ban asks what Sheila is talking about and if he's insulting his grandfather, threatening to hit him, while Sally agrees with him. Sheila asks Wu Bule if he had to choose between Sally and Bo-ban, which one he would save. Wu Bule has no answer. Sheila apologizes, saying this is how he's thought since he was young and that he didn't mean to offend him. But Wu Bule says there are no excuses because he is the one who should apologize for accepting being trapped there forever, and ever since he met Sheila, he has hoped to escape. He says that Sally and Bo-ban have grown up, and now is the time for them to choose their own destinies. If they don't want to take the risk, he will make arrangements for them to live safely. Sally says she wants to stay by his side, and Bo-ban declares he will protect his grandfather and Sally. Sheila says it's time to stop agreeing with the current state of things. For the peace of the city and the freedom of their loved ones, they must fight together. Wu Bule smiles when he hears this from the young man. He stands up and faces him, saying that if they wish to leave the city, they will have to fight against the 4 guardians, and Hicks is the weakest of them, with the remaining 3 being a greater challenge. It won't be easy to defeat Lucius, Salkia, and Dorap, and based on his knowledge, once Hicks recovers, he will seek revenge, so they don't have time to waste. He then says he will put Sally, Bo-ban, and Sheila into strict training starting now. Bo-ban looks at the other 2, while Sheila looks at his grandfather, and Wu Bule continues, saying that whether they make it out alive depends on the 3 of them. The 3 agree with their grandfather's orders. Days later, the little child was playing with a butterfly in the garden. Shilo reflects that he no longer knows how much time has passed and wonders if his mother misses him, but tells himself not to worry because he will return soon. The child tries to catch a butterfly near a ledge, but Gila grabs him, saying it's a cliff, and if he falls, there will be 2 of them, kicking the bucket, asking him to stop causing trouble. Shilo takes care of him and notices he gained 10 levels after the battle with the Beast King and has 50 points left. However, he finds it strange that Hesiod disappeared after the battle and focuses on his ability. Using chaotic elemental power drains 90% of his life but ignores all defenses and deals true damage. If his initial health is low, he could lose in 1 strike. Fortunately, he had a Berserker potion he bought earlier, which restores his health immediately, but it costs 8 levels per bottle. However, if that's how the mechanism works, he decides to save his mana for attacks and forego defense. Once he improves his healing, he plans to increase his health and defense. He decides that his attacks will serve as his defense since no one can block his ability. The system alerts him to a new message, informing him that he has 100 unread messages from Explosive Sweetheart, Xiao Mei's ID. Shilo reflects that it's her ID and looks at it indifferently. He wonders why he's receiving messages from Xiao Mei, curious if it means he can communicate with people outside the game. Shilo sees that Xiao Mei has been using the messages as a diary, always asking him not to ignore her. He wonders if he's still online in the game, and why his mother is moving, questioning who went to his school since he doesn't remember anyone. But he feels something must be wrong, wondering if his body is in a coma while his consciousness remains here. He speculates whether his mother sold their house and moved to a better city, like City B, to treat him. However, he doubts she could afford it. He continues questioning what's happening when the little child offers him a flower. Sheila throws it aside, saying he doesn't have time to play right now. The child becomes upset and falls into the grass, but then starts crying, saying his dad is mean. Sheila takes his hand away, saying he didn't mean to do that, but the child cries even more. The system activates a punishment for making the child cry. A teleportation begins, taking him to a volcano filled with lava. Molten lava splashes high into the air, and a lava creature appears before him. Sheila hands the flower back to the boy and apologizes, holding him close and saying they're leaving now. At the treatment center in the city of Deek, Joss looks out the window of his room, reflecting that Wu Bule had come there, but wondering why he kept them hidden and what motives he had. He notes that Wu Bule is one of the 12 heroes, the strongest warrior who defeated a troll, and never expected to meet him in his life. He wonders if Wu Bule is also trapped there. Wu Bule says it's just an empty title because he's just an old man, and all things from the past shouldn't be mentioned. Joss says that even so, meeting someone from the legends is incredible and asks if he can know more about something. Wu Bule interrupts, saying he needs Joss' help. The warrior asks if it's something that requires him to be there in person. Wu Bule says he only wants details about how Sheila defeated the Beastman, but Joss must keep it a secret, not even telling Filorga. Joss reassures him, saying he and Filorga will keep it secret and won't say a word. Wu Bule nods and tells him to get plenty of rest. Joss reflects that if even one of the 12 heroes is trapped, wanting to escape must be a foolish dream. Wu Bule tells him that if he truly wishes to leave this place, there's someone who can lead him to the Temple of God. He explains that this person is recruiting talents, and if Joss is interested, he should head south of the city to meet him, because he doubts Joss will stay idle for long. Filorga notices that most of Joss' injuries are healed and asks why he's still awake so late. Joss tells him that, thanks to the skilled healers, he's recovered and will be able to leave in a few days but plans to take it slow. He wonders if Filorga has also spoken to Wu Bule about Sheila and the temple. Filorga asks what he just said and if he was truly Wu Bule of the 12 heroes. Joss agrees, saying Wu Bule was his goal as a warrior, which is why he recognized him. Filorga mentions that Wu Bule was the same person who returned alone from the Black Sea after defeating the troll, yet even he ended up trapped here. Joss says the 12 heroes didn't just have empty titles, they were the 12 strongest individuals in the world. When Wu Bule's Thunderbird Guild lost to the Phoenix Guild, almost no one survived, yet Wu Bule still defeated several heroes beforehand. Not long after, a battle broke out at the Thunderbird Guild, and Wu Bule was the only one to leave alive. After that, he went to the Black Sea and defeated the troll Quink. Just hearing about it was enough to leave Joss in awe, and Gila certainly had abilities they could only dream of possessing. In the past, Wu Bule calls for everyone's attention, as the monster targets its attack on 2 people. It was Sally's parents who suddenly turned after hearing his voice, but they are struck by the troll's attack. Sally's father loses his life right then and there, while her mother collapses to the ground, drawing her last breath. Wu Bule shouts for his companions, Morse and Luna. Afterward, he decides to take Sally and go to Latinea. Over the years, he has always felt pain from the past and couldn't accept what happened, but Sally was different, and she wouldn't suffer because of him. He says they would rest, as she bore the Thunder Martial God's enchantment, and if anything ever threatened her life, it would activate, and not even the gods would touch her. He then clutches an amulet with their photo and vows to never break his promise. Panting, Sheila returns after the punishment ends, saying it was more difficult than last time and asks what had happened. The system explains that during punishment time, the monster's power increases by 10% each time punishment is activated. Sheila gets up, shocked after reading this, reflecting that this meant it would keep getting harder. The baby tries to speak, and Sheila questions his sin, thinking it would be a piece of equipment, or a beast, not a baby to take care of. The little one keeps trying to talk, and Sheila says he doesn't understand anything the baby is saying, but he asks the baby to wait, then asks if the baby can see the system, and the child nods. Sheila reflects that neither his grandfather Wu Bulei nor Sally could see the system, so he wonders how the little one does, questioning if it had some other use. He asks if the baby knows anything or if it has anything to do with him receiving messages from Xiaomei, but the baby shakes his head. Sheila reflects that trying to get answers from the kid was as futile as milking a stone, as he hoped the child might deliver a message from Xiaomei. But Sally catches his attention. She's walking alongside Bo Ban, Wu Bulei, Jas, and Filorga. Sheila says everyone is gathered, and greets Jas and Filorga for being there as well. Jas says Sheila didn't even visit them, they had to go after him. Sheila explains that something came up yesterday, so he had to return early and didn't want to bother them while they were recovering. Jas replies that it was thanks to Bo Ban and Sally. Bo Ban asks who was taking care of Sheila and since when they had become so close, but Jas tells him not to rush things. Sheila feels relieved that both are okay and asks how they came, to which Jas says they joined Wu Bulei because they want to leave the desert. Jas pats the child and asks what his name is and if he is Ji Li's son. Sheila asks how that would be possible and starts thinking of a name. He says the child's name is Yuruka. Bo Ban asks if they're done because they aren't here for idle chatter. Wu Bulei will train them. Jas asks what idle chatter is, and Bo Ban insists they should take the training seriously. Wu Bulei bursts into laughter, watching the interaction. Sheila asks why he's laughing so much, but Wu Bulei says it's nothing and adds that he hasn't felt so alive and happy since arriving in Latinea. Sally, standing behind him, thinks it's the first time she's seen him laugh so cheerfully. Wu Bulei shifts to a serious tone. He says they can relax a little now, but they shouldn't cry in secret after the training. Jas asks why it sounds so scary, and how Wu Bulei plans to train them. Wu Bulei says it won't be scary. It'll be a challenge that not even the 12 heroes could conquer. Sally carefully observes them talking. Jas asks if even the 12 heroes couldn't truly conquer it. But Wu Bulei pulls out a fragment and says that in a one-on-one battle, it depends on power, speed, and endurance, and to defeat an opponent, one must know their weaknesses. Even an error of 0.0001 seconds could be the determining factor for victory or defeat. Thus, an opponent resembling Sally appears, and the same happens with Bo Ban. Even copies of Jas and Filorga appear, and even a copy of Sheila appears while Wu Bulei explains that in a team battle, it's more about teamwork and mutual understanding. He mentions that it's an artifact created by the Archmage for a guild to prepare, which creates a copy with each member's elemental abilities and powers, but stronger. Wu Bulei continues, saying the clones don't cause real damage, but they will still feel pain, and they'll be eliminated if they experience something close to kicking the bucket. On the way to the temple, every time the team loses a member, the remaining ones will face a crueler situation. This was their specific training. Back at Wu Bulei's house, Rakadler says he's the only one preparing snacks for the three and asks if Wu Bulei wants anything specific to eat. While telling Yuruka to stay away from him, he warns that if he gets hurt while cooking, Jilu will send him to the afterlife. Wu Bulei says he shouldn't prepare food for 3 but enough for 20. Rakadler asks if they'll have visitors today, but Wu Bulei denies it. However, the door suddenly opens. All 5 appear in front of him, much more breathless than usual, and Wu Bulei remarks that they were slower than he expected. He tells Rakadler to cook for 20 people, while Rakadler asks why they finished training so quickly when only half an hour had passed. The food is finally ready, a beautifully prepared dinner. Shiloh extends his plate and asks Rakadler to refill it. Jas, Boban, and Filorga do the same, and Rakadler agrees. Wu Bulei says they seem fine since they all defeated their clones in half an hour, asking if they were satisfied with their training. All 5 look exhausted. Wu Bulei asks what was wrong, but the 5 say they were dissatisfied, extremely dissatisfied. Sally says they lost in less than 30 minutes. Jas comments that strong monsters were different this time, and Boban complains about the power of Ji Li's clone. Jilu reflects that he was right since it felt more like PvP, where their opponents didn't attack recklessly but analyzed all factors. and when it started they split in various directions and attacked them individually. He didn't expect this and ended up trapped with Bo Ban's clone and the others while watching his clone defeat everyone. In the end, only he was left against the 5. Thus, without a doubt, they had already lost when it began. Wu Bule says Ji Li's combat vision isn't bad, and he's right, they lost before it started. And in a team battle, it's not just about individual combat power but the teams as a whole, like a game of chess. Thus, the clones thought about everyone's abilities and decided on the best teamwork. This was the easiest way to defeat weaklings, offending Bo Ban. Sheila reflects that it wasn't bad since it was like a math problem, but solving it just by looking would be a trap, so he needed to learn battle strategies, using the enemy's weaknesses against them. Wu Bule says that was the training for the day and that they would try again in the morning. He tells them to rest well at night. Sheila lies in bed with Yuruka. He reflects that he knew it was training, but watching his companions lose without being able to do anything felt too real. It was as if, in a real fight, the ones who had lost were Yuruka or his mother. He then thinks he wasn't strong enough because he couldn't protect everyone. Looking out the window, he reflects. He remembers when he was young, and his mother had the chance to work at a good company, but to take good care of him, she gave it up. Then she thanks and asks if she could bring her son every Wednesday afternoon. Her boss asks if it's her son and says Wednesday is the peak hour, but Ji Li's mother insists she'll have him sit quietly without causing any trouble. Her boss asks if she's a single mother, and says with her appearance, she shouldn't have to work so hard. He asks if she's free at night, but the mother declines, saying she just wants a job. Thus, Sheila punches him in the groin, and asks how daring he was to do that to his mother. Ji Li's mother says it wasn't on purpose and apologizes. However, her boss charges at her son, saying he would send him to the beyond. Yet, Ji Li's mother grabs her boss's arm, throwing him forcefully to the ground, and saying that if she couldn't keep the job, so be it. The mother apologizes to Sheila, saying they wouldn't have burgers that night. Sheila simply holds her hand, saying he would protect her well. But a voice says that protecting others while being so weak is a joke, and Sheila recognizes the voice. Noticing it was Hesiod with his sword, Sheila asks if it was him, and where he was, while reflecting that there was no response, but it was clearly his voice. He asks Yuruka if he heard the voice of a strange man, but Yuruka denies it. Sheila reflects that if even Yuruka didn't hear anything, it could have been a hallucination from overworking. Then Yuruka climbs into his lap and hugs him, calling him father. Sheila asks how he could sleep if Yuruka clung to him like that, but notices the boy had fallen asleep. Sheila covers him and says there was nothing he could do about him, and wonders if that's how his mother felt taking care of him and protecting him on her own. He then reflects that he would be home soon and should think about how to escape, defeat the Guardians, and reach the temple with Wu Bule and the others. Hesiod says that Sheila had only defeated a strong beast king but fought completely differently today, and for some reason, all his power landed on Cotton. He then says that this was the most appropriate metaphor he'd heard, because compared to the beast king, who attacked without thinking, the clones had remarkable skills but were nothing compared to him. Sheila asks if it was him, as it didn't seem like his imagination, and wants to know where this place is and why he appeared out of nowhere. Hesiod says this is his inner world and that he is there because Sheila is his master. Sheila questions what his inner world means. Hesiod explains that it is because he was physically weak when he came to this place, so he could only find him there. Sheila thanks him and says that thanks to Hesiod, he was able to defeat the Beast King and return to the city, but asks why there are so many floating flowers in his inner world. Hesiod says he doesn't know because each inner world has things that people care about, so the flowers are something important in his consciousness. And Sheila questions this, asking why he doesn't know about it. The warrior says it's not irrelevant, and he doesn't have an answer to these questions, because the reason for bringing him there is to make Sheila strong. Then Hesiod begins to release energy from his body, saying he has recovered 1% of his combat power, which is enough for Sheila to understand how terrible the power of chaos is, as he can only use 0.0001%. Sheila questions if this is some kind of joke, as he can only use 0.0001%, noticing the thousandfold difference between them. Hesiod estimates he's being generous, and Sheila says he's exaggerating. The warrior says that's not important but rather that he will make Sheila stronger because if he leaves, everything in this world will cease to exist. The system announces that this is the Chaos Lord's training and that he must last 3 minutes without being defeated to gain 400,000 experience points. Sheila reflects that he only needs to last 3 minutes to gain so much experience, and thinks it's generous. Hesiod asks if they can begin the battle. Sheila draws the Ozeal and says he will hold for 300 minutes, with just 3 minutes isolated. Then he says they should begin preparing. In the castle, one of the hooded figures asks how strong Sheila is because Hicks is very injured. Hicks says he was careless, and that Sheila is not strong. But a voice says it doesn't seem that way, because if Sheila had used all his power, they would be collecting Hicks's body. Hicks questions what Lucius meant as he tries to stand up. Lucius says that Dorop wanted to assess Jili's ability but didn't expect Hicks to be injured, impressed that Trash was a guardian. Hicks questions why Lucius is acting so tough since she wouldn't be a match for Jila. But Hicks is struck on the head by her, who says she doesn't mind helping Lord Dorop get rid of a useless being. Hicks grows furious as the woman steps on his head. Lucius says Jila is very strong, but in her opinion, he only has brute strength and no skills. For if Dorop were there, he would have defeated Wu Bulei and the others as if cutting a cake. The hooded man says people are recruiting forces, and because Wu Bulei is one of the 12 heroes, he is held in high regard. Therefore, if Dorop moves, it will cause an uproar. Lucius questions what that means. At that moment, the man summons a werewolf, impressing Hicks and Lucius with this. It is the Latinea Wanderer. The man orders the monster to go and attack people in the city, and so the wolf howls, running towards the city at full speed. The flowers in Jili's dimension begin to move. Suddenly, an explosion hits a tree. Jila is running, with 2 minutes left on the clock. He mentally apologizes to Hesiod, deciding to detour for 3 minutes to gain experience before resuming training with him. But Jila notices that Hesiod is not approaching and reflects that he has a bad feeling. Then, a strike comes from above, hitting the ground in front of him. Jila leaps backward, falling into the snow, while anchoring his sword into the ground, trying to steady himself after dodging. Panting, he observes the damage caused, seeing that Hesiod's sword attack had created a chasm before him. Jila asks if this is training because his life is at stake. He only managed to react thanks to the Beastman King's shield on his finger. Hesiod questions if he is avoiding fighting him, because he dodged too quickly, which made it seem like he underestimated him. But fighting so cowardly would not be forgiven by Hesiod. Jila points behind Hesiod in an attempt to deceive him, then runs immediately after. Jila reflects that he must hold on long enough to complete the mission, with the timer at 2:05. Jila asks if they can fight later, as he wants to rest for a few minutes. Hesiod questions why he keeps running since his enemy won't give him time to breathe. Hesiod then advances from behind with his sword, saying this is his first lesson while attempting to strike him. Jila dodges using his divine blessing, moving behind Hesiod. He observes him, and prepares a slash using the Ozil. Hesiod manages to evade the strike, now positioned above Jila. Jila reflects that the move he used was physical and could only be avoided with the mental skill of advancing. Meanwhile, Hesiod wonders how Jila got behind him but notices that the trajectory of the movement suggests he appeared there. Jila realizes that the skill is on a 5-minute cooldown, and if he tries to attack again, he will fail the mission. The boy asks if they can rest before continuing, promising not to run anymore after that. Hesiod agrees and asks about the skills Jila used earlier. Jila reflects that Hesiod must be talking about his advanced ability. At that moment, the mission is completed, and Jila levels up. Jila explains that his skills come from the system after leveling up. Using the skills is like issuing a command, where his body moves depending on whether it's an attack or defense. He managed to dodge using the advance, asking if Hesiod found it strange. Hesiod says he didn't fully understand, but he had seen the advance ability before. Jila asks if someone else had used that skill. Hesiod reflects that the ability is familiar, but he doesn't remember who used it. Jila recalls the legend about Hesiod and wonders if that was the man's name, and whether he would remember everything once he knew it. Then he tells Hesiod he forgot to mention who he was, surprising Hesiod with this statement. Jila reveals that Hesiod is the man who saved the world and defeated Morpheus. Hesiod, however, remembers that name in his mind, astonished. Night continues to fall. Rakadler is sleeping in his room. Meanwhile, Boban reflects that it's okay for Wu Bulei to bring a beast man to the village, but not for them to share the same room. So he gets up, saying he can't stand it anymore. Suddenly, he smells something strange from outside. Boban notices it and is surprised, wondering what that smell is. But then he screams, saying it's him, until an explosion hits the room, destroying everything in its path. Rakadler wonders if it's an earthquake, but both of them see the werewolf that had caused Boban's parents' deaths. Rakadler tries to stand, saying his body feels like it's crushed to pieces. However, he wonders where Boban is, wanting to know if he's buried under the rubble. Then he asks if Boban is okay, but there's no response, thinking Boban might be dead, until a rock hits him in the face. Rakadler asks who threw that at him in the middle of the night, and if that person wanted to be sent to the beyond. But he looks ahead, surprised, seeing the werewolf attacking and Boban dodging its strike. Then, Boban prepares his black sword and tries to attack it from above. However, the werewolf scratches Boban with its claw. Boban falls to the ground, reflecting that he wasn't wrong, as the monster roars in front of him. Boban says it was the one who sent his parents to the beyond, and he would turn it to ashes. Thus, he prepares his shadow swords and says he trained hard for years to find it, but didn't expect to encounter it on his own. Rakadler asks if he's okay and how that monster got there, but Boban tells him to leave, scaring Rakadler with his reaction. Ban says he will tear the wolf's skin and dig its bones to use its blood on his parents' grave. Then, he charges at it in a pure rage mode, rushing toward the wolf with a strike, telling it to go to hell. Lucius, watching from the sky, says the plan is interesting, while Hicks asks if it wouldn't be suspicious for him to be the only one attacked. The hooded man says Hicks is right and that he summoned other monsters because, as for Wu Bulei, Dorop wants to send him to the beyond himself. He then orders Hicks to negotiate with the new helpers and stop wasting time. Lucius tells him to leave the healer to her, as she expects to have some fun with him for a bit. Meanwhile, Rakadler runs to Wu Bulei's room, trying to warn him that there's a monster outside. Wu Bulei opens the door and asks what's going on, and Rakadler tells him that Ban is fighting a monster. Thus, Wu Bulei changes his expression, looking at the village being attacked by monsters, his face growing more serious by the moment, activating his elemental grip and ordering Rakadler to find Chenjila and have him take care of Sally, to which Rakadler agrees. Thunder echoes from Wu Bulei's position as he moves, and Rakadler leaves. Sheila tells Hesiod that he is the only one who can use the power of chaos, and that he defeated Morpheus, thus sealing him in the underworld. He adds that he needs to save his uncle from the Infernal Tower, asking Hesiod if he has any memory of that name. Hesiod says his mind remains blank, surprising Sheila. Sheila reflects that something doesn't add up, as people usually remember things when they hear their names. But Hesiod says he has no memory of this world and that his name is just a title because even as Hesiod, he remembers nothing. However, Sheila's attack made it feel familiar, as if there was some connection to this world. Sheila wonders if it's about him, and how he came to this place to save him, wanting to know how he obtained the elemental power of chaos. As everything happened mysteriously, with events piling up one after another, and if Hesiod is who he claims to be, Sheila intends to help him recover his memory to answer his questions. Hesiod says they will fight again, and Sheila should use all the skills he possesses to help him remember, to which Sheila agrees. However, Sheila hears his son's voice coming from outside, and remembers it belongs to the little boy. Lucius enters Sheila's room and wonders why he has a child near him, but she tells Yuruka not to be scared because she's there to defeat Sheila, not to kidnap the child. Yet Yuruka hugs his father, preventing her from doing anything. Lucius says if he doesn't let go, she'll ensure he keeps his father company. Then, she throws something toward the child, but she notices an energy that surprises her. Sheila apologizes for being late, and tells Yuruka not to cry because the monsters are harder to defeat than Lucius, thus standing face to face with her. In the village, cries are heard everywhere due to the chaos unfolding. People run through the city while others are attacked by the Latinea wanderers. A child asks what's wrong with her mother, while a wanderer approaches her, ready to attack and use her as food, and then howls before biting the child, but is slashed by Wu Bulei's lightning strike, which throws it far, slamming it into a structure. Wu Bulei picks up the girl and asks if she's okay, but several Latinea wanderers start surrounding him, staring at Wu Bulei as their enemy, while Wu Bulei is already enraged by this. However, an earth serpent emerges from the ground, attacking the wanderer. Jas and Filorga arrive and ask Wu Bulei what had happened for the monsters to attack the city so suddenly. Wu Bulei explains that the city is surrounded by an enchantment that repels monsters and protects its people, so the monsters shouldn't reach the city center. He adds that, if he's not mistaken, letting the monsters attack the city is just a facade, because defeating them is their real objective, surprising Jas and Filorga. Wu Bulei calls the two standing behind him, telling them to head to the city center, rescue the people, and take them to his house. Jas asks what Wu Bulei plans to do, but Wu Bulei says he will go to the center of the enchantment to break the seal. Jas says the area is full of monsters and asks to go with him, but Wu Bulei surrounds himself with lightning and orders Jas to protect the citizens. Then, using his first thunder ability, he departs. Lucius is levitating outside the house. She says Sheila's speed has improved compared to a few days ago. Sheila reflects that this is another person with shadow attributes, and wonders if she is the hooded figure who attacked Sally and Ban, though he didn't expect her to be a woman. He then asks Lucius if she frequently attacks stealthily, calling her Aunt. Lucius becomes enraged at being called Aunt. Sheila reflects that if he defeats God, the citizens will have freedom, so he wants to know why they are trying to kill him. Lucius says the city was built by Dorop and will not tolerate actions that threaten them, as the temple has been a sham from the beginning, and trying to go against God is nothing but a foolish mistake. Sheila replies that he'd like to say the temple is real, but if her way of finding the temple involves hurting his companions, whether man, ghost, God, or demon, he will defeat them all. Lucius calls him a shameless braggart and says he only defeated Hicks, who was the weakest of the guardians. She then conjures a shadow attribute sword and says her combat power is on the level of her lord Dorop. Sheila notes that the Shadow Blade and Wolves are level 45 spells with incredible speed and mobility. Lucius commands her army to advance on Sheila, Sheila simply prepares the ozil in front of the wolves while holding Hiruka, and using the sacred slash, he cuts through the wolf army with a single strike. Lucius thinks it's impossible. She opens her mouth, summoning a shadow rain with 3,000 blades, creating various weapons from her portals. Sheila activates the Beast King's ring on his finger, thus creating a barrier that blocks all the weapons Lucius summoned. Sheila asks if this is the power Lucius spoke of. Lucius reflects that he easily nullified all her attacks and that she underestimated him. She levitates and says it's not bad, but it was only the beginning, creating a shadow behind her. The shadow transforms into a gigantic wolf holding a sword in its mouth. Lucius says this is her true power. A mission appears, instructing Sheila to defend Delks by annihilating the enemy leader. The mission will fail if the city becomes unstable, but the reward will be determined by his progress. Sheila watches Lucius with a smile. The wanderers run into the barrier, but magic is cast behind the soldiers who are battling. The soldiers fight fiercely, trying to injure them. As more wanderers enter the barrier, one soldier tells Greya to repair the enchantment barrier, but Greya says there are too many monsters, and if this continues, they won't last much longer. Another priest says he will guard this area because leaving would cost their lives. He instructs Wagner and Ramon to hold back the monsters, as they must protect the city. Wagner and Ramon understand the command and prepare to fight again. But the barrier begins to fragment bit by bit. Greya calls her teacher, Deadman, and says it's more than they can handle. Then lightning strikes the barrier, preventing it from breaking further. It begins to restore itself slowly and automatically. Deton wonders what happened, while Greya says the fragment sealed itself. Wubule appears floating, using his thunder element. Deadman says that's Wubule from the 12 heroes. As the wanderers rush inside the barrier, Wubule lands using lightning and hurls them away. The old man says they should leave this to him and help repair the barrier completely with the others. Detman agrees and tells everyone to follow him to the next crack. But a wind begins to surround Wubule, thus floating above the wanderers as well, and tearing off their heads just by floating. Then, a figure appears with its wind hurricanes. The soldiers rejoice, saying that Lord Dorop is there, but they notice a magic circle below them, and are incinerated by Dorop with his magic. Wubule asks what exactly Dorop is planning, but Dorop says he was the one who gave these creatures a chance to live, so he could take it back whenever he wanted. And this was the consequence of Wubule betraying him. Several swords surround Gila as he dodges, thus running from the giant wolf. But he looks back, noticing something coming, and dodges the attack that was about to hit him. The gigantic wolf has a sword in its mouth, and Gila changes his trajectory, moving with his Ozil's sword, charging at the wolf very quickly, stomping the ground with extreme force, and jumping toward the wolf's mouth with his sword, trying to land a strike on it immediately after. Lucius reflects that they seem like the attacks of a priest with great power. Thus, the gigantic wolf lands on the ground. Sheila says she'd better hurry and admit defeat so he can protect the city without too much trouble. Lucius asks why he's talking as if he's important and about protecting the city, as her lord had activated the barrier enchantment, and the traitors would be punished. Because the so-called Wubule of the 12 heroes would be defeated by her master personally. Sheila asks what she said about his grandfather Wubule going into battle with Dorop, and reflects that Wubule's sword is with him, and if he's going into battle, he'll probably be at a disadvantage without his weapon. So, he says he'll hurry and defeat this lady to help his grandfather Wubule. Sheila begins emanating blue and red energy from his body, using the annihilation ability. Lucius notices that Jili's combat power has grown again, while Jila uses the divine blessing to move quickly, and charges at the wolf to face Lucius up close. Lucius curses as she grabs a shadow sword, but Jila uses a quick attack to wound her, thus gradually forcing her to release her sword. Lucius asks if he's not going to send her to the beyond, but Jila just looks at the horizon, while Lucius collapses behind him. The mission updates, stating that he has defeated the Dark Mage Lucius and earned experience, items, and rewards to be calculated at the mission's end. Amid Dorop's hurricanes, Wubule moves using his electricity, while more wind tries to harm him. But Wubule defends himself using his thunder shield. Dorop asks if he thinks he's still the same as in his younger days, claiming his peak was as one of the 12 heroes of the past, but now he's merely a foolish old man, and that Dorop is a god who steps on insects in his path. Thus, the attack intensifies against Wubule. Dorop activates the wind summoning as his eye turns greener, thus creating a massive wind gust to strike Wubule. Dorop, watching it all, bids farewell to Wubule. Lucius coughs heavily, reflecting that the pain is like hell, and she can no longer move. Kneeling on the ground, unable to walk, she reflects that Sheila could have sent her to the beyond if he wanted, so she wonders why he held back. While Sheila plays with his son, Lucius questions if he's trying to humiliate her, wanting to show that he wouldn't stoop to sending her to hell, or if he wanted to see if she'd be grateful for not kicking the bucket because she would definitely defeat him in the future. Sheila says he never wanted her gratitude, but he just has more important matters right now, and next time, his sword will strike her. Lucius curses him in her mind, while Gila wonders why he couldn't send her to the beyond if she's just an NPC, as it feels realistic, but defeating a human feels strange. And he believes this contradiction between game and real life has affected him, as if he's sending something real to the beyond. Lucius stands up and tells him that Wu Bulei is on the eastern side of the barrier enchantment, and that he should join him because it will be impossible to defeat Dorop even fighting together. Gila believes her and says he's in no rush, while the system tells him to head east as soon as possible to return Ozil to Wu Bulei. Thus, he picks up the child and says they should hurry to help his grandfather. Running eastward at full speed, a thunderous glow appears, startling Dorop. It gets closer and closer to the Lord, hitting him in the stomach, and striking his face with extreme force, sending him crashing to the ground, destroying a large part of the surrounding street. The sound of thunder echoes. As things shatter around them, Wu Bulei uses his ultimate Thunder Destroyer ability as he advances toward Dorop. His hair and beard turn blue along with his glowing white eyes, while Dorop lies in the rubble. Wu Bulei finally descends, advancing on the city lord, causing an immense explosion of dust on the ground. But he suddenly halts his attacks as he notices something. Seeing a gust of wind swirling around his thunder, Dorop says it's truly touching to see an old man exerting himself to protect so many insects. It had been a while since an opponent excited him this much. However, unfortunately, Wu Bulei stands no chance of victory, but as a reward, he will show him the strength of a terrifying 4-element mage, levitating stones, and summoning several elemental guardians to attack Wu Bulei. One of the wanderers is knocked down by a flaming kick from Jas, and another is cut down by Filorga with her dual daggers. Filorga says there are no more monsters in this region now. Jas notes that it seems Wu Bulei managed to repair the barrier, and asks how he is doing and if he's physically injured. Filorga says he's fine, but it's her first time seeing so many high-level monsters. Jas agrees and says they are spreading like ants, and Filorga comments that it's hard to imagine how these people survived for so long, because they must have witnessed a hell 1,000 times worse than this. Jas tells them to move on since the monsters in the center are gone, but those on the outskirts are still fighting, so they should go help them. But both hear a sound and wonder what it is, looking up at the sky and marveling at the sight, noticing a giant water elemental and a flaming serpent flying overhead. Filorga notes they are dual-element summons, and it's incredible. It's her first time seeing such a large beast, wondering who this powerful mage is. Because multi-element mages can use various elements, but they are usually unrefined, resulting in reduced power, yet this one must be strong to use both simultaneously. Jas reflects that there is only one person like that. Filorga tells him to look at the sky, seeing lightning clash with the descending fire. It is Wu Bulei fighting this multi-element mage, now facing a fireball from the serpent. But Wu Bulei merely redirects the fireball with his thunder energy, then uses the thunder slash with a lightning strike in his hand to hit Dorop with force. Dorop only laughs and says it's childish. Meanwhile, a stone guardian turns to punch Wu Bulei, but the old man manages to dodge the attack, then charges lightning into his fist and shatters the stone monster, using his annihilation ability on it, watching the stone monster collapse before him. As the water elemental rises behind him, preparing a wave to attack the old man, the stone is overpowered by the water surge. Wu Bulei stands atop the rock, but notices something approaching. Spotting the guardian attacking the stone he is standing on, Wu Bulei dodges, stepping behind it, but his transformation ends, and he's left panting. Dorop comments that Wu Bulei managed to dodge, and he's impressed. However, mortals are still mortals, and his body's age is far from when he fought Troll Quink. Dorop boasts that he possesses a young body with unlimited mana that Wu Bulei can only envy, as he governs over all this trash. Wu Bulei counters that sealing his soul in a demon for eternal power is like licking a god's boots like a dog, as it's a body without true skill. Then he asks if Dorop isn't the one envying others. Dorop grows enraged and tells him to shut his mouth, then prepares a black lightning strike and shoots it at Wu Bulei, smiling as he casts his magic. Wu Bulei falls backward injured, drawn into Dorop's grasp. Dorop asks if he sees now, as defeating him was as easy as crushing an ant. He says he will tell the citizens that it was Wu Bulei who broke the barrier, and he, Dorop, is the god who defeated him to save the city, preparing to deliver a fatal blow to end him. But Ji-Le is approaching with his extreme speed, throwing Dorop far away with his attack. Dorop slams into a rock, unable to react. Wu Bulei leans on Ji-Le, calling out to him. Dorop questions who he is while standing up. After some time, Ji-Le asks if Wu Bulei is okay, but the old man says his wounds are superficial and wants to know what Ji-Le is doing there. The young man explains that after defeating Lucius, she revealed that Dorop planned to defeat him, so he came immediately, apologizing for not returning Ozil sooner. Wu Bulei says he wouldn't have been a match for Dorop even with Ozil, as Dorop had given his soul to a demon in exchange for eternal power. And as he said, Wu Bule was just someone from the past, with an old body and diminished strength, now merely an ordinary mortal. Then he says he activated the teleport to the fields and that Ji-le should hurry, taking Sally and the others away, as he would hold Dorop off in the meantime. Ji-le tells his grandfather he isn't leaving, because he, Yuruka, Sally, Bo-ban, Jas, Filorga, and Rakidler wouldn't be left behind, not for a second. Since his mother had told him that living in this world wasn't easy, but they couldn't accept their fate. Thus, he declares he will definitely defeat Dorop and take everyone to the temple, handing over the sword, saying they would leave that place for good. Wu Bule looks at the sword. The mission to deliver the Ozil weapon is completed, and Ji-le earns 150,000 experience points. But Dorop bursts into laughter, questioning their plan to leave, while creating a ball of dark energy, which collides with the two. Dorop hovers over the explosion area of his blast, while Ji-le and Wu Bule are inside a shield thanks to the Beast King's ring. Dorop questions what worms are thinking, dreaming of challenging him, and commands them to go to hell as he uses his explosive fire rain ability. But the shield defends against all of Dorop's attacks in this barrage. The shield is about to break as Wu Bule holds it, but the barrage continues relentlessly against the two. Ji-le reflects that Dorop's attack is incredibly strong and that Finir's ring is on the verge of being destroyed. The shield shatters, and Ji-le reflects that this is bad. As the fire barrage continues, Dorop hovers over the battlefield, saying no one survives that magic and asking Wu Bule how it feels to be obliterated to dust. But he notices something that surprises him, seeing a barrier rising where the explosion occurred. Wu Bule is surprised and looks at what's happening. Even Ji-le is startled by it, seeing Yuruka creating a barrier to protect his father, and Wu Bule, while holding the barrier, levitating. Dorop thinks it's impossible for a brat to create a shield of this level, but the system announces that Yuruka will fight, being level 5, with 3000 HP and 300 mana, possessing the mana hunting ability, which grants a shield that absorbs mana and converts 50% of damage into magic, consuming 100 HP. Ji-le asks if Yuruka is okay, but Yuruka, exhausted, just looks at his father, falling to the ground shortly after. But he is caught by his father, who extends his hands. Ji-le says it's okay because his father is here now, and reflects that the Beast King's barrier couldn't defend against that attack, but Yuruka was able to, saying that if it weren't for Yuruka, he and his grandfather would have been turned into a pile of ashes. And the system announces that Yuruka will be stored in the inventory for 24 hours. Ji-le thanks him and tells him to have a good rest because he will defeat Dorop while the system stores Yuruka in the inventory. Wu Bule says Dorop used several magical attacks in succession, and his abilities are on cooldown. So, he'll distract him, and Ji-le should find an opportunity to get closer and attack him. Thus, he charges forward, using his first thunder ability. Ji-le wonders what Dorop's level is, certain it isn't below Finir's. But the system cannot analyze his level, HP, or mana. Ji-le reflects that he's like the raiders, whose stats he couldn't see. Dorop says the old man is as irritating as a worm. Then Wu Bule faces him, saying this is the moment to end it once and for all, while unleashing Ozil from its seal, thus turning it into a long, reddish blade, facing Dorop while his lightning turns crimson. Dorop reflects that this must be a joke, as his victory will be overwhelming. But Wu Bule tells him he isn't sure about that. He advances using his level 2 thunder ability. Dorop says he is out of reach as he prepares his magic, using an earth ability to create an earthquake, raising a massive structure in front of Wu Bule. Wu Bule readies his sword for a descending strike, preparing to obliterate the wall, then slashing through it with his sword. However, Dorop creates several more walls. Wu Bule prepares again for the attack, piercing through all of them with his sword. Dorop casts fire spells to launch at the old man. He hurls them, but Wu Bule dodges them all effortlessly. Two guardians appear and attempt to attack him, but Wu Bule cuts them down with the Ozil outside the seal, facing Dorop once more. Dorop tells him to save his energy because there's no way he can get close to him like this. But a black lightning bolt streaks toward the intense battle unfolding. Dorop pauses and looks behind him, while Ji-le thinks his plan worked, readying himself to strike Lord Dorop. He uses Extinguish, launching it directly at Dorop, as he attempts to strike his face, telling him to take this. But his fist is stopped by a wind spell. His foot is also trapped, and even his body is caught in the center of a whirlwind. Dorop tells him not to try such childish tricks against him, but he is struck by Ji-le's blow immediately afterward, surprised when he looks at the young man. Ji-le had used the divine blessing to dispel all effects. He then attacks Dorop multiple times with Sacred Slash, landing 20 hits on the enemy. Finally, Ji-le uses Extinguish, converting the damage dealt by Sacred Slash into true damage. He prepares his final strike, telling Dorop to meet his end. Dorop is struck by the last punch. Wu Bule advances, saying this is the moment to attack. He accuses Dorap of sacrificing his soul to a demon in exchange for infinite power as he prepares his strike, then slashes him, commenting that his mage's defense is still weak. Wubule readies his final blow, saying Dorap's peak was in the past. But this strike would be enough to send him away for good, launching Dorap to the ground with a surge from his Ozeal. The attack destroys everything in its path. Sheila watches as the Crimson Thunder obliterates everything around them. He shields his face to keep the dust from hitting him. Wubule steps back after his attacks, saying it's over for Dorap. Sheila braces himself on the ground to avoid being thrown back. He wonders if this is the power of one of the 12 heroes and realizes his grandfather, Wubule, is truly incredible, because his power didn't just match Dorap's abilities but went beyond them. Wubule says part of the barrier still needs repairing and suggests they split up. He tells Gila to head east while he will go west, where monsters are still battling, and Gila agrees. But Gila feels something strange as he looks back, noticing something unusual that has occurred. He is certain the battle is over, but he hasn't received a system notification confirming the battle's end. Wubule also looks back, trying to understand. They see Dorap floating in the air. Dorap curses, saying he didn't expect a child to escape his control. He admits Gila managed to strike him so easily and is certain Wubule didn't expect that. However, Dorap begins to heal, claiming the power he possesses is beyond their imagination. Sheila remarks that Dorap healed from his wounds like the raiders. Wubule corrects him, saying he is wrong, because Dorap's power source isn't a demon but Hades, the god of the underworld. Sheila wonders about Hades in his mind. Wubule asks if Sheila remembers the man who defeated Sally's parents, as the power he used was similar to Dorap's. He also recalls hearing about Hades. Ardalis had said it wasn't everything and they were nothing, mentioning he wanted another journey, and wondered if he should ask Lord Hades. Wubule questions where Dorap thinks he's going because he will defeat him. He wants to know who Ardalis is and why he suddenly caused all this. At this moment, Dorap's power resembles that man's, and everything happening is tied to Hades. Dorap says he didn't expect Wubule to know the source of his power, admitting he didn't want to waste so much divine energy on him but didn't think he'd be so persistent. He asks if they don't understand that the powers granted by a god cannot be harmed and that all their attacks are a waste of energy, and it would be better for them to have a painless end, questioning why they insisted, as in that specific case. He should let them continue beyond the afterlife and farewell while gradually disappearing. Sheila and Wubule wonder how he vanished. Then they look around, searching for Dorap. However, the system warns that the target had disappeared. It looks to the sky and alerts them again, repeating once more when it scans the forest. Sheila says he didn't move at the speed of light but simply disappeared. But he is surprised when he looks at Wubule, seeing that Dorap is behind him, and hits his grandfather with just one punch, throwing him far away. Dorap moves forward after that, striking Wubule again in the face. Sheila steps in front of Dorap, calling out to his grandfather Wubule, but he is repelled by Dorap, as the Lord smiles, watching Wubule suffering on the ground. Dorap observes Sheila charging at him again. Sheila tries to land a punch, but he notices something strange, and sees Dorap disappearing after the strike. Dorap appears behind him and punches him in the chest, asking where his eyes are, while delivering another punch and questioning how a being like him could dare challenge him, landing multiple blows on the young man, and then throwing him far away. Sheila is gasping for air as Dorap walks toward him. The system warns that the user's health is below 10% as Sheila coughs up blood. He reverts to his normal form and says Dorap can turn invisible, but his physical strength is also formidable. Dorap watches him approach, as Sheila reflects that he has a small amount of divine power that neither his grandfather nor he could scratch. He wonders if this is the power of the underworld god Hades, and if, in the eyes of the gods, they are nothing but weak and insignificant ants. Dorap questions what's wrong and if he is filled with despair. Because if you think about it, humans have a cruel nature, as from a young age they step on ants on the ground and laugh when they see them struggle. And the way Wubule and he are now is just like ants, and he never tires of watching them struggle. Then he begins levitating Gila off the ground, telling him to stop dreaming about saving the world because he is nothing but a joke. However, he will give him more entertainment by granting him another chance to live. But Wubule charges at him with Ozeal, calling Dorap a bastard while attacking, and striking downward with the first thunder cleave. Dorap simply smirks, and Ozeal is knocked out of Wubule's hand, falling to the ground with no chance for him to recover it. Wubule is restrained by Dorap's magic as well. He says Wubule doesn't understand that he possesses godlike power and that all attacks are useless against him, because no matter how strong his elemental power is, mortals cannot defeat gods, and that is their hopeless reality. Sheila reflects that elemental attacks are useless against gods and wonders if this is just how the game is configured. Ozeal begins to levitate off the ground, moving to float in front of Dorap, who says he will give Sheila a chance. because if he defeats Wu Bulei with his own hands, Dorop will let him and the others go free. Sheila tells him to stop dreaming about it. Dorop says that if he doesn't do it, he'll just stand by and watch as he's attacked to the point of death, and his companions will be next. Then attracting several stones and binding them to Wu Bulei's body, Dorop says he should witness Wu Bulei's pain and questions why he doesn't just end it painlessly. Sheila tells him not to touch his grandfather, saying he will defeat him, but Dorop says everyone will die, or he can defeat Wu Bulei and save the others. Wu Bulei coughs blood, and Dorop questions what the boy's decision will be. Sheila curses him, saying he can do nothing but watch Wu Bulei suffer and see the others fall one by one. From Sally, Boban, Jas, Filorga, Yuruka, and even his mother, as he doesn't even know how to return home. Sheila questions if there's truly nothing else he can do. Hesiod, however, asks if trash can even be considered a god. Sheila recognizes his uncle's voice and enters the realm of his internal consciousness, reflecting that he has entered there at a moment like this. Hesiod questions if Sheila is really going to give up so easily at this moment, saying it would be shameful for him to have chosen a master who was defeated by trash like that. Sheila says it is impossible to harm Dorop because he has godly power, and elemental power doesn't work, but Hesiod agrees, asking how mortals could harm him. He explains that, by the natural order, normal elements cannot harm him. Sheila asks if he has something up his sleeve. Hesiod tells him that if Sheila kicks the bucket, he will too, so he won't allow his master to lose to someone like that. He claims to know how to handle this because while the power of the underworld is indeed strong, Dorop has crossed paths with Sheila. Sheila questions what he means by cross paths. Dorop explains that ordinary powers don't work against gods, but the element of chaos is different. It's the only power capable of defeating gods. And now is the moment for Sheila to learn how terrifying the chaotic element is, releasing 3% of its power. Dorop laughs and asks if Sheila has given up resisting, saying he will simply defeat him, because Sheila appears to be sleeping with his eyes closed. Dorop conjures an elemental sword and tells Wu Bulei to meet his end, but Sheila asks if Dorop isn't the one who will meet his end, making Dorop turn around. Sheila now has the Divine Blessing and Sacred Strike with their cooldowns reset. His appearance changes as he is surrounded by an aura. Sheila activates the Divine Blessing, nullifying all debuffs and increasing his speed, along with his life absorption ability. Dorop remarks that it's interesting and declares that Sheila must be defeated, but Sheila stops the sword with his hand. Dorop reflects that such a thing is utterly impossible, and he is brutally struck by a punch to the face. Sheila uses Sacred Slash to attack Dorop repeatedly, delivering numerous punches to his body. Dorop's health depletes rapidly in the system, losing 1000 HP and then 3000 HP with the attacks. Sheila then kicks him to the ground, causing a massive explosion at the point of impact. Hesiod comments that if he had the power of the god of fire, the chaotic element would turn to water to extinguish it. The extinguish ability reaches level 12 and can now deal damage to gods, reducing skill cooldowns with each attack and adding extra damage. Sheila becomes a natural monster against gods, with 20 seconds left on extinguish. Wu Bulei watches Sheila floating in the sky. He wonders if this is the power of the chaotic element. Sheila asks Hesiod a question, wanting to know why he gave him access to chaotic power now. Hesiod doesn't answer directly, but he explains that if the opponent weren't using divine power at that moment, Sheila wouldn't have been allowed to unleash his god-defeating powers. Because those powers are an absolute taboo, and no god allows their existence, they can sense its presence and stay vigilant. So for now, stronger gods will send their agents to spy on him and even try to defeat him. Because future enemies won't just be lackeys, they'll be gods themselves. The system mission warns Sheila to use the Scattered Tears, Divine Blessing, and Sacred Strike twice, and to annihilate Dorop. Sheila tells Hesiod not to worry because he will definitely leave that place, even if he becomes an enemy of the gods. He uses the Scattered Tears, instantly recovering 1000 HP and 700 mana, and resetting all skill cooldowns. Sheila notes that this is exactly what he needed to defeat this bastard. He prepares to put an end to everything, recovering 1000 HP and 800 mana, along with his abilities. Dorop falls to his knees, reflecting that this is impossible, because Hades had taken his soul and rid him of all senses, so he wonders why he is feeling pain. He questions who the hell Sheila is and what he has done, analyzing whether Sheila could be the legendary one. But he looks to the side, startled. Barely dodging an attack from Sheila, Dorop calls Sheila a bastard, but Sheila approaches him using the Divine Blessing and Sacred Slash. Dorop tries to use his invisibility, causing Sheila to miss his attack and be surprised. The system activates the Scattered Tears, nullifying Dorop's ability, and Sheilai's target lock-on is restored. Dorop reflects that Sheila can see him and curses him in his thoughts. He is struck by Sheilai's barrage, losing 10,800 HP from 30 accumulated attacks with triple explosive damage. He then loses another 6000 HP as the Divine Blessing cooldown resets. Dorop spits blood. Shilo attacks again as the system announces that the opponent's health is below 10%, and he loses another 3000 HP, with the effects ending in 5 seconds. Thus, Shilo prepares his final punch and tells Dorop to go to hell, gathering all his aura into this last attack. Dorop smiles and questions if this is the power of the enemy of the gods. Shilo hits him with a punch of all his strength, focusing entirely on this final blow, causing an immense explosion after the attack. Everything around is destroyed by the blast. Wubule, watching the fight, simply observes. Boban finally manages to defeat the Wanderer in their village. Jas and Filorga look up at the sky, watching what's happening there. Dorop is consumed by the explosion, being completely obliterated as if he were nothing. Shilo annihilates Dorop and gains 3 million experience points, leveling up 5 times and obtaining several items and a red key. Shilo completes all the requirements and levels up, gaining 1.5 million experience points and acquiring the essence, raising his level 2 more times. The system announces that it activated the Compound Foundation, using the illustrated manual, and activating the map and function detection. Thus, Shilo collapses to the ground as his power dissolves, while Wubule runs toward him. Wubule calls out to Shilo, who is right in front of him, and Shilo, smiling, says they've won, collapsing to the ground immediately after, leaving the two of them in the area destroyed by the explosion. In the underworld, inside Hades' structure, several flasks store souls. Hades is drinking tea, seated in his chair. Then, the soul in one of the flasks begins to fade. Hades reflects that Dorop's soul has disappeared and wonders if he wasn't the guardian of Latinea. He says that the god's fear has arisen in Latinea, but this time, Argolis should be there. On the endless ocean, there is a boat sailing. Argolis stands atop the boat with a subordinate. The dragon says the boat is too slow, but it's the only mode of transportation in the endless ocean, questioning how much longer it will take to reach Latinea. The skeleton says Latinea is just ahead. Argolis smiles as he observes. Seeing an open portal filled with lightning, someone begins calling out to Shilo to wake up, finding himself in a place with his coat. Shilo wonders if that voice is his mother's, and gets up, calling for her, startling everyone on the train. The passengers give him strange looks as the boy pants heavily. Shilo asks where he is and what's happening, but a bald man grabs him and says he must have been startled by everything. The subway announces the next stop is Avenue High School, and passengers should disembark, so Shilo reflects that he's back in the real world. He shouts that he's back, making the bald man question if he's some kind of lunatic. The subway instructs passengers to exit on the left side. Shilo says he had a nightmare and apologizes, but the system warns him that danger is approaching. The boy wonders if he's still receiving messages from the system and if he hasn't truly returned to the real world. The bald man asks what Shilo is trying to do, but Shilo hears a voice urging him to hurry and get out of there immediately. Shilo questions what's going on and why he's hearing his mother's voice, but then he vanishes in front of the bald man. The bald man questions how he disappeared, and some men in suits ask if he just saw a high school student. The man says the kid disappeared and questions if they didn't see it, but the bald man simply stares without responding. Shilo wakes up again, opening his eyes. He gets up quickly from his bed. Panting, the boy is confused, wondering if he's back in Latinea and if it was all just a dream. But it felt so real, and he wants to know why his mother's voice came at the end of the dream. Then someone says that Shilo has finally woken up. It's Sally, approaching him while carrying food. Shilo asks if she's okay and about the others, including Wubule, and Sally tells him everyone is fine, but his grandfather couldn't stay still, so he went to help. Shilo reflects that he's been asleep for 10 days, and Sally tells him that his injuries are healed, but he didn't wake up, and everyone was worried. She then says he should help his grandfather and the others by going to check on the city after eating, because the citizens are preparing a big banquet tonight to thank him for saving the city, and their hero needs to give a speech. Shilo questions the speech and asks Sally to wait. Sally turns, saying there are new clothes for him by the door and that he should change. Shilo observes the food that Sally had left, but he remembers that Yuruka is in his interdimensional space. He opens his inventory, noting that after so much time, Yuruka should be recovered. However, the system fails, notifying him that Yuruka isn't ready yet, and Shilo reflects on how he hasn't recovered in 10 days. Shilo notices an unread message. He opens it, finding a notification that he has completed the prologue of the Cosmos in held difficulty, and all system functions have been unlocked. Shilo wonders if the game was set to held difficulty, and that's why he couldn't leave, but now all functions have been unlocked. Letting that thought go, he decides to check the forging system, activating the function, which uses materials, stones, or other equipment to create new items. Shilo reflects that the forging system is similar to those in other games he's played before, and the creation and restoration features are as familiar as ever. He notices that the whole experience feels more like a game and wonders if the illustrated function could be due to the creatures he encountered earlier. The illustration function states that all creatures and items encountered will be added, along with related information, and once upgraded, it will identify high-level entities. Shilo reflects that Yoruka and the Predator are unknown entities, so he needs to evolve further to understand them. The system activates the map feature, helping him see monsters, and also the title system, which can provide bonuses. There's also a teleportation feature, which allows him to travel to different district teleporters, but only he can use it. Shilo reflects that the crucial function is the development of the enemy of the gods system, which indicates he has an essence he can use. He considers that he has unlocked only 3% and that if he needs to go to the temple in the future, it's better to have more power. Deciding to use it now, his body becomes enveloped in chaotic energy. Shilo reflects that it's just a 1% improvement, but his body feels full of power, like an ocean. He looks at the new items, the Earth Ring, which grants the Earth element, plus 30 intelligence, and plus 25 physical stats, and the Ice Armor, which enhances his health and has a passive ability. Shilo equips the Ice Armor just as he reads its passive ability, noticing that he finally has the key, although the armor begins to fade. Shilo comments that the last time he opened a treasure chest, Yoruka appeared, and he wonders what it will be this time. In the city undergoing reconstruction, Jas tells Wubule that all the wounded are being cared for, and the barrier enchantment has been repaired. With the repairs completed, the city will soon return to normal. Wubule congratulates him and asks about the banquet, to which Jas replies that Filorga and Rakadler have been handling it since early morning. However, the Guardians are still there. Higgs and Lucius are being watched by Boban, but Salkia has escaped, and his whereabouts are unknown. Wubule comments that there's something suspicious about Salkia. Jas notes that Salkia is alone outside, so he won't survive for long. Wubule agrees but says he feels Salkia is hiding something potentially much more powerful than Dorop. Shilo wonders what the key might be. Analyzing whether it's a dungeon mission key, the system explains that the blood of the Scarlet Light descends upon the world, and the brave will cut down the seed of evil. The key leads to a dungeon with triple experience, a legendary weapon, and a risk of obliteration. The system asks if Shilo will use it. Shilo reflects that if his in-game character is defeated, his physical body will be annihilated, and in Yoruka's dimension, the same mechanics apply. However, the first time he entered Latinea, he was defeated by a wanderer, and the system notified him about his character's loss but not his body's. He wonders if his consciousness is trapped there, and if his body is still on the train. Cursing the situation, he questions if everything is just a dream, but Hesiod interrupts him, asking if Shilo is alright. Shilo asks how Hesiod appeared, and Hesiod replies that it's his illusory form. He just wanted to tell Shilo that this isn't a dream but doesn't know if Shilo will return if he leaves Latinea. Shilo questions this, wanting to know if he has left the game at this moment. Hesiod agrees and says he has observed everything Shilo has also seen. Shilo recalls the bald man after him, noting that he appeared on the train, and asks about his mother's voice, wondering why she asked him to leave. Hesiod says he didn't hear that but admits he's never encountered teleportation before. However, it's an enormous power he's never seen, either elemental nor divine. Shilo reflects that since arriving in Latinea, there are only two possibilities. The first is that his consciousness never left the game, and he is in a map similar to the subway station in the real world. The second is that he returned to reality, but it's impossible for his body to have been on the subway, which means he transmigrated into the game. However, what matters isn't whether this world is real or illusory, but rather that the bald man he saw earlier might be the one Xiaomei mentioned. He wonders if this man took his mother, and questions everything that's happening, asking why he was the only one sent there. Shilo starts cursing while shouting, but Hesiod tells him to calm down. The system asks if Shilo will use the Crimson Key, warning that if no decision is made within 10 seconds, the system will terminate the process. The key appears before Shilo. Shilo says it's fine and reassures his uncle not to worry, adding that he has something to ask, questioning if Hesiod has ever defeated gods before and about Morpheus. Hesiod remains silent upon hearing these questions, but apologizes, saying his mind is blank regarding all of this, though he must have defeated a god before. Otherwise, it doesn't make sense for him to be imprisoned, because all gods fear chaotic power, and one day, Shilo will have the chance to defeat the strongest god. Shilo reflects that his uncle is right, and the only thing he needs to do is keep getting stronger. Hesiod says the power to defeat gods has been activated, and the gods will seek him out soon, so he should prepare himself. Shilo simply gets dressed and tells his uncle not to worry because he won't die there. Not only will he leave that place alive, but he will also solve all the mysteries one by one, declaring they should start improving after the festival. At night, a bonfire is lit in the city of Delk. Rakadler says Sally has asked him 10 times in an hour, but everyone is ready and just waiting for Gila. Sally gets irritated and questions what he means by that, threatening to make him see, but Rakadler simply admits his mistake. Joss says he never feels at home in Latinea but will enjoy the night, and Wu Bule praises his mindset, saying that without Gila, they wouldn't know their current situation. The warrior states that he has faith in Li's victory because he saw him defeat the Beast King with his own eyes. Wu Bule adds that the Beast King and Dorop are on different levels since Dorop's power comes from Hades. Joss questions if he means Hades, the king of the underworld. But Gila arrives, asking why Joss has fallen. He questions if Wu Bule said something scary to him. Boban just observes, while Sally calls out to him, and Rakadler thanks him for waking up. Wu Bule stands and says their hero is here, so they should begin. Thus, a torch is lit. Next to it, several others are lit by the citizens, who raise their torches and start calling for their hero. Everyone is cheering for Gila, thanking him for being a hero, while the young man just watches without reacting, staring ahead without doing anything. Everyone calls for their hero, but Sally steps onto a stage, asking everyone to be quiet, as she invites the hero who saved the city, Chen Gila, to say a few words. Wu Bule tells Gila to step up because everyone is waiting for him, but Gila hesitates. The old man asks what's wrong and if he's nervous in front of the crowd, but Gila denies it, saying he doesn't feel like a hero or anything like that because the city was saved, but not because of him. It was the old man, Joss, Filorga, and Boban who protected everyone, and if it weren't for Wu Bule's help, he wouldn't have defeated Dorop. So he doesn't think he can stand before the citizens and take all the credit. Wu Bule tells him not to worry because everyone knows that if it weren't for Gila, they would all be doomed by now, and they just need a true hero to give them hope for a new future. Gila is the only one truly worthy of holding such a title in the group. Joss and Rakadler, standing behind him, tell Gila he can do it, and Wu Bule continues, saying that as a hero, he should lead the people and give them hope of leaving Latinea, proving that it's not impossible. Gila simply nods his head. He steps onto the stage as the entire audience cheers for their hero. Gila reflects that his grandfather was right. Everyone had experienced war and lost their hope, but now they just needed someone to lead them. He decides that he will take the title of hero and protect those in need, like a true hero. He wonders if this is what it feels like to be needed by others and realizes it's not a bad feeling. The people of the city begin cheering for Gila as he steps onto the stage. The young man introduces himself as Chen Gila and thanks everyone for believing in him. He declares that he will definitely keep everyone safe and lead them out of Latinea. Argalus finally steps onto the sand. He tells Cecil to wait there, promising to return soon. Then he steps forward, commenting that it has been a few centuries and this place is as dark as ever. Transforming into a dragon, he says he will take a look at the territory of Finir and check if that fool has truly been defeated. Under the moon, Gila sits atop a house, taking a sip of sake while admiring the moonlit sky. Joss and Boban arrive, and the warrior comments that Gila is good at connecting with people. He asks if Gila knew he could handle the crowd because he himself wouldn't dare to, while Boban remarks that Gila has thick skin and wouldn't be affected by such things. Gila asks about Boban's mouth and where Sally and his grandfather are. Boban feels offended, and Joss replies that the grandfather is drunk, while Filorga is feeding Lucius and the others. Boban goes off to a corner while Joss takes a sip of Gila's sake. Joss asks if Wu Bule has shared any plans for the future or when they will head to the temple. Gila denies this, saying he wants to improve his skills first, and then proceed. Boban brings up the divine beast guarding the temple. Joss asks what he means, and Gila explains that compared to the other guardians, Dorop was low level. He adds that they need to become much stronger than they are now. With that, Gila jumps off the roof, saying he's going to rest and telling the two of them to go to bed early as well. Joss questions what's up with Gila and why he's acting so mysteriously. Our video ends here. If you enjoyed it, please like and subscribe to the channel. Until next time, bye bye.